My sister faked panic attacks to ruin every milestone in my life, so I kicked my family out of my wedding and exposed their lies. On the happiest day of my life, I chose to keep my own parents and sister away. Some say I was selfish, others say I was brave. But after years of my milestones being stolen, I wanted one day that was mine alone. Now I can't stop asking myself, did I go too far? Or finally do the right thing? I, 23, married my partner, Leander, 33, last month. But I did not invite my parents or my younger sister Ophelia, 28, to the wedding. Now, half of my family calls me selfish and harsh. I need to know whether I made the right decision or went too far. Let me explain why I took this decision. When I was 15, my sister Ophelia was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Doctors believed it was treatable with medicine and therapy. Nothing life-threatening or really debilitating. But since that day, everything in our house has focused around Ophelia and her mental health. When I was 17, I realized there was something wrong. I had spent months preparing to audition for the school play. It was the lead role in Romeo and Juliet, and I desperately wanted to play Juliet. My parents promised to drive me to the audition and wait for me. Ophelia stated on the morning of the audition that she was experiencing a panic attack and wanted to go to the emergency room immediately. My parents took her to the hospital, leaving me at home. I missed the audition entirely. Later that evening, my grandma called to ask about Ophelia. During the talk, she recounted seeing Ophelia at the mall earlier that day, laughing with companions while carrying shopping bags. When I asked my parents about it, they said Ophelia must have felt better after her medical visit, but the audition had already gone. My grandparents flew in from across the nation to celebrate my 20th birthday. We had organized a large gathering at a great restaurant. My parents had ordered a personalized cake with my photo on it, and I'd invited all of my friends. Ophelia stated 2 hours before the party that she was experiencing significant anxiety due to an approaching test and required quick medical assistance. My parents transported Ophelia to urgent care in the car that was carrying my dessert. The party continued on without them. My grandparents paid for everything and tried to make it memorable, but I spent the most of the evening wondering if Ophelia was all right. When my parents arrived home at midnight, I discovered that Ophelia had been given minimal anxiety medicine and was released after 20 minutes. They ate my personalized birthday cake in the hospital waiting area because Ophelia said she was hungry. The tendency persisted throughout high school. My senior year, I captained the debate team, and we advanced to the state championships. Ophelia suffered from a mental health crisis on the morning of the tournament, according to my parents. She claimed she couldn't handle being alone and required constant supervision. Rather than watch me compete, my parents chose to stay at home with her. We won first place, but no one in my family was around to see it. I was accepted into a good institution on a partial scholarship, but my parents indicated they couldn't help with the remaining expenses. They explained that they were conserving money for Ophelia's future treatment and medical expenditures. I worked 2 jobs throughout college to pay for my education and earned a degree in accounting. Meanwhile, Ophelia dropped out of community college twice because she felt the stress was too much for her mental health. When I graduated from college, I particularly asked my parents to attend the ceremony. I purchased aircraft tickets and reserved seats for them. Ophelia called them the night before her graduation, weeping. She claimed she was suffering a breakdown after seeing a social media post regarding college graduations, which aroused her anxiety. My parents flew back quickly to be with her. I walked across the stage alone while my roommate's family cheered in the audience. After graduating, I found a job with a reputable accounting business in another city. I worked hard and was promoted to senior accountant within 4 years. When I called to tell her the news, my mother spent 4 minutes congratulating me before shifting the subject to Ophelia's recent therapeutic breakthrough. She spoke about Ophelia's progress for 25 minutes. Around this time, Leander and I met at a professional meeting. He worked for a different accounting firm, and we began dating. His family greeted me instantly. His mother remembered my birthday without being reminded. His father inquired about my work projects and actively listened to my responses. His sister gave me a card after I received another promotion. They celebrated my accomplishments without making them about anyone else. After 3 years together, Leander proposed. We chose to have a small wedding with only close family and friends. As we finalized the guest list, I began to have panic attacks over inviting my parents and Ophelia. I kept picturing Ophelia having a crisis during the ceremony, or my parents leaving halfway through to care for her. Leander recommended we go over all the big events Ophelia has disturbed throughout the years. We produced a list, and it was far longer than I thought. Ophelia had emergencies at my high school graduation, college graduation, birthday parties, promotion celebration dinner, and even a weekend visit with my parents, which Leander and I had planned. Every significant event in my adult life had been clouded by Ophelia's mental health. Leander asked what I wanted to do. I told him I wanted one day just for us, with no drama or emergencies. We chose not to invite my parents or Ophelia to the wedding. I called a few aunts and uncles to inform them and requested them not to reveal any information about the wedding date or place. The wedding was amazing. Leander's father escorted me down the aisle because my own father was not present. Leander's mother helped me get dressed and did my hair. We had 50 visitors who came to celebrate with us. No one departed early. Nobody had a medical emergency. For the first time in years, I was the center of attention at my own party. 3 days after the wedding, my cousin shared images on social media. My parents noticed them and promptly called me. They left 15 voicemails and sent many text messages. My mother described me as ungrateful and selfish. My father claimed I humiliated them in front of their extended family. They claimed to have been good parents who gave everything for their girls, particularly Ophelia, who required additional support. Ophelia sent me a lengthy note claiming that I had wrecked the family and led her to have a severe anxiety attack that landed her in the hospital. She complained that I was cruel for omitting her from such an important day, especially because her mental health had recently improved. Several aunts and uncles called to lecture me on family loyalty. They claimed that mental illness was not Ophelia's fault and that I should be more tolerant. They emphasized that my parents did their utmost to support both of us, and that Ophelia actually requires assistance. A few cousins have stopped speaking with me completely, but several family members have been supportive. My grandma stated she knows why I took this decision, but she wishes everything had been different. One of my uncles stated that he had noticed the pattern over time, and that it was unfair to me. Now I'm wondering if I was incorrect. Perhaps I should have given my family another chance. Maybe Ophelia was genuinely sick all those times, and I'm being overly harsh. My parents made many sacrifices for Ophelia over the years, and mental illness is a legitimate medical issue. Maybe I was selfish for putting my own happiness before of Ophelia's, but I remember how peaceful my wedding day was. For once, I did not spend the entire occasion worrying about another person's crisis. I was able to focus solely on marrying the person I love, with no distractions or controversy. Leander and I were able to fully enjoy our celebration. I've been married for a month, and my parents still don't speak to me. Ophelia occasionally texts me, asking when I plan to apologize and make things right. The rest of the family is divided, with some defending me and others believing I went too far. I need honest feedback from folks who don't know my family. Was it bad of me to exclude them from my wedding? Should I have handled things differently? Am I being cruel to Ophelia and my parents, or was this the best decision for my mental health and marriage? Update 1. I'd want to thank everyone who replied to my first post. Strangers' encouragement helped me realize that I was not alone in noticing a trend in my family's conduct. Some others mentioned something called medical trauma, which provided me a new perspective on my childhood experiences. Much has happened since I last updated. First, my parents upped their efforts to get me to apologize. My mother called Leander's employer and informed his manager that he had snatched their daughter and turned her against her family members. She inquired about the company's policy on employees who break up families. Leander's employer was perplexed and informed my mother that personal family affairs were not the company's responsibility. My father began phoning Leander personally, leaving messages about how I had always been a difficult child who required additional patience. He claimed Leander had no idea what they had been through raising Ophelia, and that I had exaggerated everything to make myself look like a victim. He requested Leander to persuade me to reconcile with them. The most upsetting thing was when my mother contacted Leander's mother and cried because they had lost their daughter. She said I had shut them off without notice and refused to explain why. Leander's mother, a retired social worker, listened intently before asking some questions about our family background. When Leander's mother inquired about specific events, such as graduations and birthdays, my mother became defensive. She said that Ophelia's mental health needed sacrifices from everyone in the family, and that I was overreacting to a few missed occasions. Leander's mother pointed out that missing every key milestone in a child's life involved more than simply a few events. My mother accused Leander's family of poisoning me in front of my own parents, which ended the conversation horribly. Leander's mother later informed me that my mother hung up on her when she argued that parents should be entitled to attend their children's graduations without being denied. But the biggest surprise came from my cousin Jessica, 26F, who lives in the same city as my parents. She called me last week with unexpected information. Jessica informed me she had been thinking about my wedding plans and remembered something unusual from when we were teenagers. She stated that she had always felt Ophelia's timing for her emergency was odd, but she never said anything because mental illness is meant to be unpredictable. Then Jessica told me about an incident that occurred when I was 17. It was the night of my senior prom. I'd saved money from my part-time work to buy a dress and get my hair professionally done. My date was the guy I'd been crushing on for a year, and he had finally asked me. Ophelia began experiencing what my parents described as a serious panic attack 2 hours before the prom. She claimed she couldn't breathe and felt as if she was dying. My parents hurried her to the emergency room and told me they'd attempt to return in time for photos. They never returned, and I ended up attending prom with my date's family, who took photos of us. Jessica explained that she had been working at the movie theater that night and had seen Ophelia with her boyfriend at the time I was supposed to be taking pre-prom photos. Ophelia was eating popcorn and appeared perfectly normal. Jessica found that weird, but imagined Ophelia had healed quickly and my parents had granted her permission to go out. Jessica never told me about it since she didn't want to cause family conflict. But after hearing about my wedding, she began to wonder how many other times Ophelia's remarkable recoveries corresponded with crucial moments in my life. This information impacted me harder than I anticipated. I had always considered that Ophelia's panic attacks were genuine, despite the inconvenient timing. Learning that she was out having fun while I missed my senior prom made me reconsider everything. I decided to review Ophelia's social media posts over the years. What I discovered was disturbing. On the day of my college graduation, when she was supposed to be having a breakdown about graduation triggers, she posted images of herself at a music festival. The timing indicated that she was posting at the precise same time that my parents were traveling home to care for her. When she suffered the panic attack that disrupted my 20th birthday party, she had checked into a restaurant across town with her pals 2 hours later. The location tag indicated she was present at the time my parents stated she was too anxious to be left alone. I discovered at least 6 such instances in which Ophelia's social media behavior contradicted the emergency that had disrupted my events. She was often out having fun with her buddies, looking happy and normal. I took screenshots of everything and gave them to Leander. He was quiet for a long time after reviewing the evidence. Then he inquired if I felt Ophelia was faking her mental health problem to destroy my special days. I didn't want to think my own sister could be that calculated and vicious, but the evidence was right there in her own social media posts. She had been lying about medical issues for years, and my parents had either been duped or had helped her. This realization altered my perspective on my entire childhood and adolescence. It wasn't simply terrible luck or lousy timing. Ophelia had purposefully destroyed my accomplishments and celebrations. My parents had encouraged her behavior by never questioning her quick recoveries or convenient scheduling. I chose to approach Ophelia directly. I phoned her and asked her why she was posting from a music festival during my college graduation, when she was supposed to be having a mental health crisis. She remained silent for nearly a full minute. Then Ophelia burst into tears, accusing me of hitting her while she was already struggling. She stated that her social media posts did not convey the full story, and that she frequently forced herself to go out despite suffering panic attacks. She said I was being unkind by questioning her mental instability. But when I brought up the movie theater event from prom night, Ophelia's account fell apart. She couldn't explain why she was eating popcorn and laughing with her partner when she should have been in the ER with a panic attack. Ophelia eventually revealed that she would fake her symptoms when she felt I was receiving too much attention. She claimed it was unfair because I excelled in everything, while she suffered from mental health concerns. She stated that she too deserved support and attention, especially since I was being recognized for accomplishments that came naturally to me. I asked Ophelia whether she realized that her phony emergencies had forced me to miss important life events that I would never get back. She claimed that my events were not more essential than her mental health requirements, even though she had exaggerated at times. The talk ended when Ophelia accused me of being a bad sister who never supported her mental health journey. She said that I was using a few social media posts to invalidate years of true worry and sadness. After we hung up, I realized Ophelia had not apologized for anything. She had not admitted the agony her falsehoods had caused me. Instead, she attempted to make me the villain for exposing her dishonesty. I haven't spoken to my parents since learning about Ophelia's bogus emergencies. Part of me wants to offer them the evidence and see what they say, but another part of me believes they already knew the truth and decided to prioritize Ophelia. Anyway, Leander believes I should concentrate on constructing our life together rather than attempting to persuade my family to realize what they did to me. He points out that even if they accepted everything, it would not compensate me for my missed graduations or wrecked prom night. I've been remaining off social media and not responding to communications from extended family members. Some of them are still urging me to reconcile with my parents, claiming that family members should forgive each other no matter what. But I'm not convinced forgiveness is possible if the other party refuses to admit they did anything wrong. Right now, I'm concentrating on my marriage and profession. Leander and I are looking at houses in a new city, after his company offered him a promotion. The prospect of starting over somewhere new away from all of the family strife sounds enticing. Update 2, I didn't want to make another update. But something significant occurred that I believe those who have followed my story should be aware of. Last month, Leander and I relocated to Denver for his job promotion. We acquired a little house and were adjusting to our new life. I was feeling better about the wedding situation and began to worry less about my family's reaction. Then my Aunt Carol, 54 female, my mother's sister, contacted me unexpectedly. Carol had been one of the family members that pushed me to reunite with my parents. She had left me multiple voicemails following the wedding, calling me stubborn and selfish. Carol's voice sounded different this time. She explained that she needed to tell me something vital regarding Ophelia and my parents. She asked if I could meet her for coffee while she was in Denver for work the next week. Carol had never supported me before, which made me cautious. But curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to meet her. Carol appeared apprehensive as she arrived at the coffee shop, constantly checking her phone. She told me that she had been cleaning up her late mother's house and discovered something that altered her perception of my family situation. Carol took out a shoebox filled with old letters and cards. She explained that my grandma had kept all letters from family members for decades. The majority of it consisted of dull family updates and holiday cards. But Carol had discovered a collection of letters my mother had written to my grandma over the years. The letters began when Ophelia was first diagnosed with anxiety and lasted throughout high school and college. Carol gave me one of the letters from when I was 14. I read in my mother's handwriting about Ophelia's jealousy of my academic accomplishments and social standing. My mother stated that Ophelia began experiencing panic episodes whenever I brought home good grades or was asked to gatherings. The letter added that Ophelia's therapist had suggested that she may be unconsciously scheduling her anxiety bouts to correspond with my triumphs. My mother noted that the therapist suggested family counseling to deal with sibling rivalry and attention-seeking behaviors. But the most stunning thing was what my mother wrote next. She explained that she and my father had opted against pursuing family therapy because it would be too expensive and time-consuming. Instead, they chose to offer Ophelia extra attention during her episodes to make her feel more safe. My mother's letter specifically said that she was aware that Ophelia's panic attacks were exacerbated when I was celebrated for something. Rather than confronting this trend, my mother chose to accommodate it by ensuring Ophelia received equal or greater attention throughout my accomplishments. Carol handed me another letter from my final year in high school. My mother wrote about Ophelia's prom night panic attack, noting that she recovered fast and went to watch a movie afterwards. My mother knew Ophelia was well enough to go out, but she didn't come back to take prom pictures with me because she didn't want Ophelia to feel excluded. There were letters for my college graduation, advancements, and even my engagement announcement. My mother admitted in each letter that Ophelia's timing was questionable, but she always decided to favor Ophelia's emotional demands over my celebrations. The final letter was dated only 4 weeks before my wedding. My mother informed my grandmother that Ophelia was upset over not being asked to be maid of honor. The letter stated that Ophelia planned to have a panic attack at the wedding ceremony to remind everyone that she too needed help. My mother declined to discuss this unacceptable plan with Ophelia. Instead, she stated that she was willing to leave the ceremony early if Ophelia required it, because Ophelia's mental health was more vulnerable than my thoughts about my wedding day. Carol claimed she had read these letters 3 times before calling me. She recognized my parents were not innocent victims of Ophelia's mental condition. They had actively participated in a routine that valued Ophelia's attention-seeking conduct over my actual accomplishments. I asked Carol why she was showing me this now, given how critical she had been of me after the wedding. She stated that reading my mother's own words convinced her that I was telling the truth regarding the sabotage pattern. Carol apologized for not believing me sooner. She remarked that from the outside, my parents appeared to be doing their best to deal with a mentally ill child. She had no idea they were making deliberate choices to allow Ophelia's manipulating behavior. After Carol left, I sat in my car and read all of the letters again. Seeing my mother's sentiments written in her own handwriting was more distressing than I had anticipated. She'd known all along that Ophelia was timing her episodes to mar my wonderful times. She'd decided to reward the behavior rather than halt it. When I arrived home, I showed Leander the letters. He remained quiet for a long time after reading them. Then he apologized for making me see proof of my parents' disregard for my happiness. I decided to make copies of the letters and send them to Ophelia. I included a note asking her to explain why she thought it was okay to plot panic episodes just to ruin my wedding and other activities. Ophelia contacted me 4 days later, shouting and wailing. She claimed that I had no right to have those letters and was invading her privacy by reading them. She maintained that her mental health issues were genuine, even if she occasionally exaggerated them for attention. I asked Ophelia whether she knew that preparing to stage a panic attack during my wedding ceremony was cruel and deceitful. She explained that she did not go through with it since she had not been invited, therefore I should be glad rather than furious. Ophelia then said something that stunned me. She explained that she had always believed that our parents liked me more because I was accomplished and easy to nurture. She said that her anxiety and depression were legitimate medical issues, but she had discovered that having episodes gave her the attention and care she desired. Ophelia said that she never wanted to upset me and that she deserved parental support and celebration as well. She claimed that my accomplishments came easily to me, however her mental health difficulties were hard effort that deserved attention. I informed Ophelia that fabricating medical issues to divert attention away from other people's accomplishments was not a legitimate method to get support. I pointed out that her actions had forced me to miss important events such as graduations and proms. Ophelia stated that the incidents were less essential than her mental health requirements. She told me I was selfish for putting parties and ceremonies ahead of her mental well-being. She accused me of not caring about her problems or helping her recover. Ophelia finished the call by saying she was banning my number and never wanted to talk with me again. She claimed that rather than helping her healing journey, I opted to destroy our family by publicizing private business. I haven't heard from my parents since Carol showed me the letters. I believe Ophelia told them that I have evidence of their enabling actions. Part of me wants to confront them with the letters, but I'm not sure what I'd learn from the talk. Leander believes I should let the whole affair go and concentrate on our new life in Denver. He points out that I now have irrefutable proof that I made the correct decision in not asking them to the wedding. Ophelia had genuinely planned to stage a panic attack at my ceremony, and my parents were ready to accommodate her. I've been debating whether I should send copies of the letters to the extended family members who chastised me for excluding my parents and Ophelia from the wedding. Some of them might reconsider their positions if they understood the truth about Ophelia's deliberate behavior. However, I'm concerned that it will only add to the family's turmoil and divide. The folks who are most important to me already know the truth. Perhaps it is best to allow others to think whatever they wish. Right now, I'm concentrating on adjusting into our new city and making friends with people who are unfamiliar with my family history. It feels good to be with individuals who recognize my accomplishments without qualification or comparison to someone else's requirements. Final update. This will be my last update on the wedding scenario. I wanted to relate what happened because several people have been asking for a conclusion to the story. Ophelia unexpectedly arrived at my Denver home around 3 months ago. I wasn't expecting her and was surprised to see her standing on my porch with 2 suitcases. Ophelia claimed that our parents kicked her out of the house after she argued with them about seeking a job. She claimed they told her she needed to get more independence and stop relying on them for everything. She drove to Denver because she didn't have anywhere else to go. I did not welcome Ophelia in. Instead, I asked her why she believed I would assist her after everything that had occurred. She burst into tears and told us that we were sisters, and that family was supposed to support each other no matter what. Ophelia informed me she had been reflecting on our relationship and understood that some of her behavior over the years had been inappropriate. She offered to work on herself and repair our relationship if I would give her a chance. I particularly asked Ophelia about the planned panic attack at my wedding, which my mother had mentioned in her letter to my grandma. Ophelia agreed to suggesting the idea but claimed she would never have followed through on it. When I pressed Ophelia about all the other fabricated situations over the years, she grew defensive. She admitted that her mental health issues were real, even if she occasionally exaggerated symptoms for attention. She claimed that I was being unfair by focusing on a few incidents rather than appreciating her legitimate medical requirements. Ophelia stated that she was willing to apologize for any suffering she had caused me, but that I must also accept responsibility for abandoning the family when she needed help. She said that cutting off communication harmed her mental health and demonstrated that I did not care about her well-being. I told Ophelia that I did not want to repair our connection. I emphasized that her tendency of sabotaging significant events had permanently damaged my faith in her. I stated that her failure to accept full responsibility for her conduct demonstrated that she had not truly changed. Ophelia became enraged, accusing me of being cruel and carrying grudges. She claimed that I was using her mental condition against her and punishing her for her medical requirements. She claimed that I had always been jealous of the attention she received from our parents. I requested Ophelia vacate my property. She declined, saying she had driven 15 hours to meet me and deserved the opportunity to explain herself. She sat down on my front porch and stated that she would not leave unless I agreed to let her stay with Leander and me temporarily. I had to contact the police to have Ophelia removed from my property. When the authorities arrived, Ophelia explained that I was her sister and that we were having a family disagreement. She claimed that I was harsh and unkind for refusing to assist her when she was homeless. The police told Ophelia that she couldn't stay on someone's property without permission, even if they were kin. They asked whether she had any place else to go, and Ophelia explained that our parents had kicked her out, so I was her only option. One of the cops recommended that Ophelia contact local social services for housing assistance. Ophelia began crying, saying she simply wanted her sister back and didn't understand why I was so cold. After the cops left with Ophelia, I was shaken by the experience. Leander arrived home from work to find me sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. He asked what had happened, and I informed him about Ophelia's sudden visit. Leander was anxious that Ophelia would return or escalate her attempts to reach me. He suggested we put security cameras around the house and seek a restraining order if Ophelia continued to harass us. My father called me 2 weeks later, the first time since the wedding. He explained that Ophelia was staying at a motel and had ran out of money. He asked if I would reconsider assisting her because she was my sister and family should take care of one another. I asked my father if he had read the letters my mother had sent to my grandma about Ophelia's fabricated emergencies. He was quiet for a bit before explaining that those letters were private correspondence that I had no right to access. When I asked my father if he knew Ophelia had planned to stage a panic attack at my wedding, he replied Ophelia's mental health difficulties were complex, and I was oversimplifying the situation. My father believed that Ophelia actually suffered from anxiety and despair, even if she occasionally acted out for attention. He stated that as her family, we should encourage her recovery rather than blame her for her sins. I informed my father that I was done allowing Ophelia's manipulating behavior. I emphasized that her tendency of undermining my accomplishments had harmed me in ways that could not be mended with a simple apology. I said that I was not responsible for resolving issues that he and my mother had caused by supporting Ophelia's attention-seeking conduct. My father became angry and accused me of being selfish and cruel. He explained that Ophelia was truly struggling and required family assistance to get back on her feet. He argued that I was neglecting my responsibilities as a sister and daughter. I explained to my father that Ophelia was an adult who needed to face the consequences of her conduct. I pointed out that she had spent years purposefully damaging my critical moments, and that I was not bound to rescue her from the consequences of her actions. My father closed the conversation by saying that he was ashamed of the person I had become. He informed me that my mother was sad after losing both of her daughters, and that my stubbornness was driving the family apart. I haven't heard from any of my family members since that phone conversation 7 months ago. Leander and I settled into our lives in Denver and met new people through work and neighborhood activities. We joined a hiking group and volunteered at a local animal rescue together. Last month, I was promoted to accounting manager at my company. When I told Leander about my achievement, he took me out to dinner and contacted his parents to congratulate me. His family delivered flowers to my office, and his sister gave me a celebratory note. For the first time in my adult life, I was able to celebrate a professional triumph without fear of someone else's emergency overshadowing it. There were no frantic phone calls reporting panic attacks or medical emergencies that required quick attention. I don't regret excluding my parents and Ophelia from my wedding. My grandmother's letters provided evidence that they had willingly participated in a habit of favoring Ophelia's attention-seeking conduct over my actual achievements. Some people may believe I should have given my family more chances to reform or tried harder to rebuild our connections. However, I've learned that I can't force others to own their wrongdoing, or make restitution for the pain they did. My life is now serene, free of the continual drama and manipulation that characterized my adolescence and young adulthood. Leander and I intend to create a family within the next several years, and I am dedicated to providing a household in which all children feel cherished and appreciated equally. I still think about my family, and wonder what would have happened if my parents had addressed Ophelia's jealousy and attention-seeking behavior when we were younger. But I can't alter the past, and I refuse to allow their dysfunction continue to harm my future happiness. To anyone reading this who sees similar patterns in their own family, I want you to know that your accomplishments are worthy of recognition, without regard for qualification or competition. You are not responsible for controlling other people's emotions or sacrificing your own happiness in order to maintain peace. Sometimes the healthiest option is to create new traditions with individuals who sincerely want to help you succeed. That is what I have done. And I have never been better. My mom criticized me as a stupid child at Christmas, so I told her how much I had been financially supporting the family. The room went dead silent. I always thought Christmas would be the moment I could finally share the good news that would make my family proud. The engagement to the love of my life and the promotion I had worked so hard for. But instead, that night shattered everything between us. In all honesty, it was probably the nicest thing that ever happened to me. To really comprehend it, you must first grasp what it was like to grow up. I was always the middle child in my family, which meant that I was almost invisible. My older brother, Lucas, was the golden boy. My mother, Catherine, thought he could do no wrong. He's now a doctor, and she never lets people forget. Then there was Sophia, my younger sister, the darling baby, the tiny princess who got away with everything and eventually became a great lawyer. And I, Emma, was stuck in the midst, constantly scurrying, desperate to earn even a portion of the attention and love they appeared to receive so easily. From the time I was old enough to understand our family dynamics, I understood I needed to work twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. Lucas could bring home B's and be complimented, whereas I had to maintain straight A's simply to get a mere nod of attention. Sophia threw tantrums and broke things, which was cute. She was simply expressing herself. However, if I even raised my voice, I was being rude and need an attitude correction. I recall spending numerous hours in high school working part-time at the neighborhood grocery shop and tutoring younger students. Not because we needed the money, but because I genuinely believed that if I could contribute monetarily, my parents would finally recognize my importance. I saved every penny to buy flowers for my mother on Mother's Day, jewelry for her birthday, and thoughtful Christmas gifts that I spent weeks selecting. Lucas and Sophia would get something last minute from the mall, and their gifts usually resulted in the largest smiles and the longest hugs. College was meant to be my new beginning, my opportunity to show myself in an area I was enthusiastic about. I selected marketing because I enjoyed the creativity, strategy, and ability to present a story that resonated with people. But when I told my family about my major, my mother's face sank. It was as if I had just stated that I was dropping out completely. "Marketing," she remarked, her voice full of displeasure. "That's not a real career, Emma. That's just playing with pretty pictures and slogans. Why can't you be more like Lucas and choose something that actually helps people, or like Sophia, something that requires real intelligence and makes a difference in the world?" Those statements stung more than I admitted at the time, but I persevered, graduated with honors, and found my first job at a tiny marketing agency downtown. I worked my way up gradually, taking on extra projects, working late, coming in early, and proving myself time and again. Every modest accomplishment, every client I acquired, every successful campaign, I'd call home, bursting with pride to deliver the news. The chats always concluded in the same manner. "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Lucas just got published in another medical journal, or Sophia just won another case? She's really making a name for herself." For years I continued trying. I sent cards on holidays, called every week, and remembered birthdays and anniversaries. When I was 28, my parents moved into their new house, and I spent the whole vacation painting walls and arranging boxes. My siblings are too busy with their vital occupations to help. I dog-sat their German Shepherd anytime they left town. Even if I'm allergic, I'd spend the entire weekend sneezing and taking antihistamines. When my father, Edward, underwent emergency gallbladder surgery this spring, I took time off work to transport him to appointments and sat with my mother in the waiting room for 5 hours. Lucas was in surgery that day, while Sophia was in court. But I was the one who got admonished later about how I should have phoned them both more regularly for updates. The worst aspect wasn't even the absence of recognition. It was a constant comparison. Every talk eventually came back to how much more prosperous, gorgeous, and accomplished my siblings were. Family dinners were endurance tests, as I sat there listening to constant adulation for accomplishments that, while not much more amazing than my own, were regarded as Nobel Prize winners because they came from the golden children. But this past fall, things in my life began to fall into place. James and I had been dating for 3 years before he proposed on a weekend vacation to the mountains in October. The ring was simple and wonderful. More significantly, he saw me in a way that my family never did. He praised my accomplishments at work, encouraged my creative pursuits, and never made me feel as if I had to compete for his attention or favor. Around the same time, my employer promoted me to senior marketing coordinator. It included a large income rise and the opportunity to run my own staff. It was everything I had worked for. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly proud. I couldn't wait to deliver both pieces of news with my family for Christmas, hoping that this time would be different. Christmas morning began as it always did at my childhood home on Maple Street. The house was adorned exactly the same way it had been for the previous 18 years. White lights on the evergreen tree, crimson and gold ornaments acquired by my mother, and the same angel topper since I was 5. The smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee permeated the air. Christmas music played quietly. I arrived about 9 a.m., arms full of freshly wrapped gifts and a heart full of apprehensive joy. James was visiting his family in Portland, but we had planned a celebration when he returned. I'd been carrying my engagement ring in my purse for 4 months, hoping to announce it in person. My father met me at the door with one of his loving bear hugs. Edward had always been the more emotionally available father, the one who remembered to inquire about my employment and listened. "There's my marketing genius," he added, accepting the gifts. "How's the new position treating you?" I blushed. "Actually, Dad, I have some really exciting news to share with everyone." "Oh yeah, can't wait to hear it, sweetheart." My mother arrived in the doorway, wearing the red cashmere sweater I had purchased her for her birthday last year. She looked me up and down with that familiar gaze, as if she had already found fault before I even said hi. "Emma, what on earth are you wearing? That green dress makes you look washed out. Didn't I tell you that color doesn't suit your complexion, and your hair looks like you just rolled out of bed?" "Merry Christmas, Mom." I forced a smile. "I actually spent an hour on my hair this morning." "Well, you should have spent 2, she said, going to the kitchen. "Sophia looks absolutely stunning in her new navy suit. You should ask her where she shops." My sister Sophia was already in the living room, looking stunning in a fitted navy dress that likely cost more than my monthly rent. She worked for a top law firm and dressed accordingly. Lucas sat on the couch, wearing his fancy watch and fashionable sweater, going through his phone, looking for messages from the hospital. "Look who finally decided to show up," Sophia said, smirking. "We've been waiting to start presents." "I'm literally 6 minutes late because I stopped to get gas," I said, but no one seemed to listen. The gift exchange went precisely as I imagined. Lucas gave everyone gift cards that he had definitely purchased at the last minute, but they were pricey from high-end businesses. So Mom gushed about how kind and generous he is. Sophia had purchased our parents a weekend holiday to a posh spa resort, earning her 20 minutes of applause and enthusiastic planning chats. I'd spent weeks selecting personalized gifts for everyone: a vintage medical textbook related to Lucas's specialty, a beautiful leather briefcase with Sophia's initials engraved, and a custom photo album for my parents filled with family photos from the previous decade that I digitized and printed myself. "Oh, how nice," my mother commented, swiftly turning through the album. "This must have taken you some time." "I spent about 50 hours on it," I claimed. "I had to scan all the old photos and restore some damaged ones, then design the layouts." "That's sweet, dear. Lucas, show everyone that new watch your colleague gave you." And with that, the topic moved on. My father squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "This is lovely, Emma. Thank you." But the moment was already past. As the morning evolved into afternoon, additional family members arrived, including Aunt Clara, Uncle Frank, cousins Lily and Edward Jr., and my grandmother Margaret. The home was full with laughing and discussion, and I found myself drawn to the kitchen, assisting my mother with dinner preparations as I had always done. "The turkey needs to come out in 20 minutes, she said, her gaze fixed on the potatoes she was mashing. "And someone needs to set the table." "Where's Sophia?" "She's in the living room talking to Grandma Margaret." "Well, she shouldn't have to worry about kitchen work. She works so hard during the week." I bit my tongue. I worked just as hard during the week, yet it never appeared to affect these computations. As dinner time neared, my anxieties grew. I had intended to make my revelation during dessert, when everyone would be relaxed and in high spirits. I kept caressing the ring box in my purse, reminding myself that this was excellent, happy news that should unite families. But when I saw my mother's face light up whenever Lucas recounted his latest case, or Sophia mentioned her recent court victory, I began to wonder whether I was setting myself up for disappointment yet again. Dinner was served at 3 p.m. sharp, exactly like every Christmas since I can remember. The dining room table was set with my mother's finest china, the same pattern she had used for special occasions since I was a child. Grandma Margaret sat at one end, my father at the other, and the rest of us filled in the gaps, following an unspoken order that always placed me between my youngest cousin and the vacant chair where my grandfather used to sit. The talk revolved smoothly around themes I'd heard 100 times before. Lucas's new medical practice developing, Sophia's recent elevation to junior partner, and my cousin Lily's wedding plans. I contributed when asked, laughed at my Uncle Frank's awful jokes, and complimented my Aunt Clara's new hairdo, all while waiting for the appropriate time to reveal my own news. "So Emma," my grandma asked during a pause in our chat, "are you still working at that little advertising company downtown?" "Marketing company, Grandma, and yes I am. Actually I have some exciting news about that." Before I could finish, my mother jumped in. "Emma thinks making pretty pictures for businesses is the same as having a real career. I keep telling her she should go back to school for something more substantial, like nursing or teaching." "Marketing is a real career, Mom," I answered, attempting to maintain my voice level. "It's actually a field that requires a lot of strategy and analysis. I just got promoted to senior coordinator, which means I'll be leading my own team." "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," my Aunt Clara responded pleasantly. "Congratulations." "Thank you. Actually, I have even bigger news than that." I dug inside my purse and brought out the small velvet box, my heart thumping so loudly that I was sure everyone could hear it. This was it. The moment I had been planning for weeks. "James proposed," I said, opening the box and revealing the stunning solitaire ring. "We're engaged." The reaction was not what I had hoped for. After a brief moment of silence, the majority of the table offered polite congratulations. My father's expression softened into a real smile, and my grandmother reached out to squeeze my hand. But my mother's expression was unaltered, almost bored. Sophia inquired, "When did this happen?" "In October. We went to the mountains for a weekend and he proposed during a hike to this beautiful overlook. It was perfect." "October," my mother said, her voice harsh. "You've been engaged for 4 months and you're just telling us now." "I wanted to tell you in person as a family." "Well, that's just typical of you, Emma. Always so secretive. Always keeping things to yourself. No wonder we never know what's going on in your life." I sensed the usual sting of judgment masquerading as care. "I'm not secretive, Mom. I call every week. I just wanted this to be special." Lucas inquired, "What does James do again?" Despite the fact that I had told him at least 3 times. "He's a high school English teacher." "A teacher?" my mother repeated, disappointed. "Well, I suppose that's stable employment at least." The way she phrased it made it obvious what she was thinking. Not outstanding, not successful, and not good enough for her kid. Never mind that James was kind, bright, and hilarious, and treated me as if I were the most important person in his life. "He's a wonderful man," my grandmother declared firmly. "When do we get to meet him properly?" "Soon, I hope. He's with his family in Portland for Christmas, but we're planning to have dinner with everyone next month." "I hope he knows what he's getting into," Sophia replied, laughing softly. "Emma's always been the difficult one in the family." "I'm not difficult," I insisted. But my mother had already nodded in agreement. "Emma has always been challenging," she added, as if I weren't right there. "She's never quite figured out how to make things easy on herself or anyone else." The words struck me like a physical blow, but I attempted to shake them off. This was intended to be a celebration, a pleasant occasion. I could not let them spoil it. "Well, I think it's wonderful news," my father exclaimed, raising his glass of wine. "To Emma and James, may you be very happy together." A few individuals raised their glasses half-heartedly, but the atmosphere was forced and unpleasant. The talk swiftly shifted to other things, and I found myself sitting there with the ring box still in my hands, feeling smaller and more insignificant than before. As dinner was being served, my mother began into a comprehensive explanation of Lucas' most recent professional accomplishments. He'd been highlighted in a medical journal, invited to present at a conference in Chicago, and was being interviewed for a position at the university hospital. Each accomplishment was discussed in great detail, with my mother's delight nearly radiating across the table. "And Sophia," she said without pausing, "just won the biggest case of her career. The settlement was in the 6 figures, and the senior partners are talking about fast-tracking her to full partner." "That's amazing," I said, truly meaning it. "Congratulations, Sophia." "Thanks," she murmured, but her focus had already returned to her phone. I sat there listening to my siblings' praise, waiting for someone to bring up my engagement or promotion, but it never happened. It was as if I had never spoken, as if my news did not deserve more than a few seconds of attention. My mother looked directly at me and delivered the words that would permanently change our relationship. "You know, Emma, I've been thinking about this engagement of yours, and I have to be honest. I'm worried about James. I mean, what kind of man proposes to you?" The table became quiet. My cousins looked up from their phones. "What do you mean?" I inquired, fearing I already knew. "Well, let's be realistic here. You're 32. You work in a job that barely pays the bills. You live in that tiny apartment, and you've never really accomplished anything significant. You're the most useless child we have. I just hope James realizes what he's signing up for before it's too late." The hush that ensued was deafening. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting to see how I would respond. My Aunt Clara appeared horrified. My father was shaking his head in astonishment. Even Lucas and Sophia appeared stunned by the brutality of the comment. But, for the first time in my life, instead of shrinking back and accepting it, making excuses or attempting to laugh it off, I felt something else rise up inside me. Yes, it was angry, but it was also clear. It was 32 years of hidden frustration and hurt that finally came out. I rose up slowly, my hands trembling from emotion, and looked my mother in the eyes. Then I added, "Stop calling me when you need money," with a calm and clear voice. Her face fell. The stillness that followed my statements was so complete that I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway and the faint sound of Christmas music playing in the living room. My mother's expression shifted from arrogant superiority to something I'd never seen before, genuine amazement mingled with panic. "What are you talking about?" she said, but her tone had lost all authority. "I'm talking about the $1,600 I've been sending you every month for the past 3 years to cover your car payments because Dad's business was struggling," I told you. "I'm talking about the $3,000 I gave you last spring when he needed surgery and your insurance wouldn't cover all the costs. I'm talking about the $2,000 I sent to help pay for Sophia's bar exam fees because she'd already spent her trust fund on that trip to Europe." I dug into my purse and took out my phone, launching my banking app with remarkably steady fingers despite the adrenaline rushing through my veins. "Want to see the receipts?" I asked, holding up the screen. "I have them all right here, every transfer, every check, every emergency loan that somehow never got paid back." My Aunt Clara stared at me, her mouth slightly wide. My Uncle Frank had set down his fork and listened closely. My grandmother nodded slowly, as if the parts of a puzzle were finally coming together. "Emma," my father began, but I hadn't finished. "Remember last Christmas when Lucas's student loans went into default because his new practice wasn't bringing in enough money yet? Who do you think paid those off? It wasn't Mom and Dad because they were still recovering from Dad's medical bills. It was me. For $1,000 that I'd been saving for a down payment on a house." Lucas's face had turned pale. "Emma, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know because Mom made me promise not to tell anyone. She said it would embarrass you, and that I should just consider it my contribution to the family." "My contribution?" I returned my gaze to my mother, who was opening and closing her mouth as if she were searching for words that would not come. "You want to know what kind of man proposes to someone like me? The kind who sees that I've been single-handedly keeping this family financially afloat while working my supposedly meaningless job and living in my supposedly pathetic apartment. The kind who recognizes that maybe, just maybe, I've been sacrificing my own financial security and dreams to take care of everyone else." "I never asked you to," my mother said faintly. "You absolutely did ask. You called me crying about the car payments. You called me panicking about Dad's surgery. You called me begging for help with Sophia's fees. And every single time I helped because that's what families do. But apparently that's what the useless child does while the successful ones get all the credit and none of the responsibility." Sophia finally spoke up in a small voice. "I didn't know you paid for my bar exam. Because I wasn't supposed to tell you. Just like I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about the money I've been lending Mom and Dad, or the payment I made on Lucas's loans, or the countless other times I've bailed this family out of financial trouble." I reopened my banking app and started reading actual numbers and dates. September 15th, 2022, $1,600 to Catherine Walsh for car payment. October 3rd, $1,600 to Catherine Walsh for car payment. On November 7th, Edward Walsh received $2,000 for medical expenses. Catherine Walsh received $1,600 on December 19th for her auto payment. My father was staring at my mother with a look I hadn't seen before. "Catherine, is this true?" "It's not what it sounds like," she responded swiftly. "Emma was just helping out temporarily while we got back on our feet." "Temporarily?" I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "It's been 3 years, Mom. 3 years of monthly payments. 3 years of me prioritizing your financial stability over my own. 2 years of me living paycheck to paycheck while you drove around in a car I was paying for, complaining about how unsuccessful your useless daughter is." My grandmother leaned across the table to hold my hand. Honey, why didn't you tell any of us about this? Because I thought if I could just help enough, if I could just prove my value to this family in some way, maybe I'd finally earn the love and respect that Lucas and Sophia seemed to get for free. I thought if I could be useful, even if it was just financially, maybe Mom would stop looking at me like I was a disappointment. I had been holding back tears for years, and they were finally coming. However, they were no longer tears of despair. They were tears of relief, tears of finally uttering a truth I'd been holding in for so long. You want to know what James sees in me? I asked, my voice rising stronger. He sees someone who's been working 2 jobs to support her family while they belittle her career. He sees someone who's been giving up her own dreams and financial goals to make sure everyone else in her family is okay. He sees someone who's been the real backbone of this family while being treated like she's worthless. Lucas shook his head. Emma, I had no idea. If I'd known you were the one who paid off my loans, you'd what? You'd have treated me with basic respect. You'd have defended me when Mom made her snide comments, because that's all I ever wanted. Not gratitude, not praise, just basic human decency. I glanced to Sophia, who was looking down at her plate. And you? Do you have any idea how many times I've covered for you? Not just financially, but in every other way. When you were too hungover to help Mom move, who do you think spent her weekend packing boxes? When you were too busy to visit Dad in the hospital, who do you think sat with him for hours? Emma, my dad said. I'm so sorry. I had no idea your mother was asking you for money because she made me promise not to tell you. She said it would hurt your pride, and that you were the most financially stable one. It was my responsibility to help. Funny how I went from being the most useless to the most financially stable, depending on what she needed from me. My mother found her voice again. You're being dramatic, Emma. Families help each other, that's what we do. No, Mom. What families do is support each other emotionally and treat each other with respect. What you do is take my money while telling everyone how worthless I am. What you do is use me as a financial safety net while treating me like an embarrassment. I up and moved my chair away from the table. Well, congratulations, you're about to find out exactly how useless I really am because as of today, the Bank of Emma is permanently closed. My revelation sparked an instant and tumultuous response. As soon as I declared that I was no longer serving as the family's financial safety net, various conversations broke out around the table. My Aunt Clara demanded to know how long this was going on. My Uncle Frank was asking my father if he knew about the money. My grandmother looked at my mother with intense disappointment. Emma, wait, my mother murmured, standing up while I collected my bag and coat. Let's talk about this privately. Our family business. I returned my gaze to her. You mean the family business where you humiliate me in front of these same people every chance you get? The family business where you announce to everyone that I'm the most useless child you have? I think they're entitled to know the truth about how this family really operates. You're being vindictive, she said, her voice quivering. I'm being honest. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being completely honest about what's been happening in this family. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. My cousin Lily spoke from across the table. Emma, are you serious about the money? You've really been supporting them financially? Dead serious. I can show you bank statements going back years if you want proof. My father stared at my mother, confused and angry. Catherine, we need to talk right now. Not in front of everyone, she snapped. Why not? You had no problem discussing Emma's failures in front of everyone. You had no problem announcing to the entire table that she's useless. So why is it suddenly inappropriate to discuss the truth? Lucas eventually spoke up, his voice subdued. Emma, about my student loans. I genuinely didn't know. I thought Mom and Dad had helped me out. I understand you didn't know, I said. And I intended it. None of you knew because I was specifically told not to tell you. But Lucas, can I ask you something? In all the years we've been adults, have you ever once asked me if I needed help with anything? Have you ever inquired about my finances, my career struggles, my personal life beyond the bare minimum? He was silent for a long time. No. He eventually conceded. I guess I assumed you were doing fine. You assumed I was doing fine because it was easier than actually paying attention to my life. Just like it was easier for Sophia to assume someone else would handle the family emergencies, and easier for Mom to assume I'd always be there to bail everyone out while she criticized everything about me. Sophia eventually looked up from her dish. I don't understand why you didn't just say no if you didn't want to help. Because I did want to help, I exclaimed. I wanted to help because I love this family despite everything. I wanted to help because I thought maybe if I proved my value in some tangible way, I'd finally be treated like I mattered. But I realize now that no amount of financial help can ever change how you guys perceive me. My grandma cleared her throat, and the room became quiet. When Margaret Walsh talked, everyone listened. She had been the matriarch of our family for as long as I could remember, and her opinion was respected. Catherine, she began, her voice severe in a way I'd rarely heard. I am deeply disappointed in you. This young woman has been sacrificing her own financial security to help this family, and you've been treating her like she's worthless. That's not just ungrateful, it's cruel. Mother, you don't understand the whole situation, my mother began. I understand enough. I understand that Emma has been working 2 jobs to support herself and apparently half this family, while you've been telling everyone who'd listen that she's not good enough. I understand that she just announced her engagement, which should be one of the happiest moments of her life, and instead of celebrating with her, you used it as an opportunity to tear her down. The room was silent save for my mother's fast breathing. I had never seen her mother call her out that directly before. And another thing, my grandmother went on. I've watched this girl grow up, and she's never been anything but kind, generous, and hardworking. If she's the most useless child you have, Catherine, then you have no idea how to measure a person's worth. My Aunt Clara nodded emphatically. I have to agree with Mom, Emma. I had no idea you were dealing with all of this. I always wondered why you seemed so stressed during family gatherings. I wasn't stressed, I replied gently. I was exhausted, emotionally, financially, physically exhausted from trying to be enough for a family that had already decided I never would be. My mother made one final attempt to regain control of the narrative. Emma, you're making this sound much worse than it is. We're family, we help each other. No, Mom. What families do is support each other emotionally and treat each other with respect. What you do is take my money while telling everyone how worthless I am. What you do is use me as a financial safety net while treating me like an embarrassment. I headed near the door but turned around once more. My wedding is going to be beautiful. James and I are going to build a wonderful life together, and we're going to do it without the constant criticism and emotional manipulation that I've been accepting as normal for the past 32 years. Anyone who wants to be part of that life with respect and kindness is welcome. Anyone who doesn't can keep my phone number for emergencies, but don't expect me to answer. And with that, I walked out of my childhood home, leaving behind a table full of stunned faces and a mother who had finally known what it was like to be the one left speechless. The week after Christmas was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My phone began ringing before I even arrived home that evening, and it didn't stop for days. But for the first time in my adult life, I didn't answer every call right away. I wasn't giving up everything to control other people's emotions or solve their problems. James had returned from Portland 2 days earlier, when I called him crying from my car in my parents' driveway. He discovered me sitting on my couch around 11 p.m. That night, still dressed for Christmas, I stared at my phone, which hummed with incoming calls and text messages. I can't believe I actually did that, I kept saying. I can't believe I finally said all of that out loud. I can, he murmured, bringing me closer. I've been waiting for you to stand up to them for 3 years. I just didn't want to push because I knew you had to get there on your own. But what if I was wrong? What if I was too harsh, Emma? He spoke softly. You've been paying your mother's car payment for 3 years while she told people you were useless. There's no universe in which you were too harsh. The messages began pouring in that night and lasted for days. My father called first, his voice thick with what appeared to be genuine regret. Emma, honey, I had no idea your mother was asking you for money. I'm so sorry. If I'd known, Dad, it's not just about the money. It's about the way she's treated me my entire life. The money was just the final straw. I know, sweetheart. I've been thinking a lot about that since you left, and you're right. I should have stood up for you more over the years. I should have said something when she made those comments. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever gotten from anyone in my family, and it meant more than I could say. Lucas called the following day. Emma, I feel terrible about the loan situation. I want to pay you back. It's not about paying me back, Lucas. It's about the fact that for all these years, you've been perfectly happy to assume that someone else would handle family problems while you focused on your career. You never once asked if I needed help or support. You're right, he replied gently. I guess I always saw you as the strong one, the one who had everything figured out. I was the one who couldn't say no. There's a difference. Sophia waited 3 days to call, and she was guarded. I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this, Emma. Families help each other out. It's not like anyone forced you to give us money. Sophia, do you remember what you said to me at dinner? You said I was the difficult one in the family. Do you have any idea how that felt coming right after Mom called me useless? I was just joking around. It wasn't a joke to me. It never is. Do you realize that between you and Lucas, I can't remember the last time either of you said something genuinely kind about me? The last time you supported me or celebrated something good happening in my life? She was silent for a long time. I guess I never thought about it that way. That's the problem. None of you think about it. You take my support for granted while treating me like I'm the burden. My mother, understandably, was the most insistent. She made 6 calls on December 28th alone, leaving more frantic voicemails. Emma, this is ridiculous. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Emma, you're being incredibly selfish. Your father is upset, and this is affecting the whole family. Emma, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude needs to stop. We're your family. On December 28th, she took a different strategy. Emma, honey, I think I may have spoken too harshly at dinner. Maybe we can work something out about the money situation. But it wasn't until December 30th that she called and spoke the words I'd been waiting 32 years for. Emma, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I almost did not answer the phone. I'd been screening her calls for days, and James had been encouraging me to take my time before responding, but something about the 10th ring compelled me to pick up. Hello, Mom. Emma, thank God. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. Your father and I have been talking, and I think I owe you an apology. A real one. I waited for him. What I said at dinner was unforgivable. You're not useless. You're the opposite of useless. You've been God, Emma. You've been holding this family together, and I've been treating you terribly. It was the closest thing to a sincere apology I'd ever received from her, but I wasn't ready to let down my guard entirely. Mom, it's not just what you said at dinner. It's been a pattern my entire life. The constant criticism, the comparisons to Lucas and Sophia, the way you dismiss my career and my accomplishments. I know, she said, her voice cracking. I know, and I don't have a good excuse for it. I think maybe I saw myself in you, and I was harder on you because of it. What do you mean? I was the middle child too. I know what it's like to feel invisible, and instead of protecting you from that feeling, I think I made it worse. I think I pushed you harder because I wanted you to be stronger than I was. It wasn't a whole explanation, and it wasn't an excuse, but it was the first time my mother showed me genuine vulnerability or self-awareness. The money stops, Mom. All of it. No more car payments, no more emergency loans, no more bailing anyone out. I understand. You're right to stop. We never should have put that burden on you. And the criticism stops too. I'm not going to tolerate being belittled anymore, especially in front of other people. Okay, I'll try to do better. Don't try, Mom. Do better. Because if you can't, James and I will build our life without this family's involvement. It was an ultimatum, but it seemed justified. For the first time in my life, I was creating clear boundaries with consequences that I was willing to enforce. 3 months later, my life had drastically changed. The incessant financial worry was vanished, replaced by something I'd never known before. Actual savings. For the first time since college, I had money left over at the end of the month. James and I opened a joint savings account and began planning not only our wedding, but our future together. The emotional shift was considerably more pronounced. Without the continual burden of family drama and financial demands, I felt lighter, more confident, and more like myself. My work performance increased significantly once I was no longer distracted by family emergencies and guilt-inducing phone calls. My employer observed the change and hinted at future promotion prospects. You seem different lately, she commented at my quarterly review. More focused, more assertive in meetings. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I was doing something I'd never done before. prioritizing my personal well-being. The family relationships changed substantially after the financial safety net was withdrawn. My father, it turned out, was absolutely oblivious of how much money my mother had borrowed from me. When he realized the full extent of it, he was enraged. 2 years, Catherine, you've been taking money from our daughter without telling me. They ended up going to financial therapy together, which should have happened years before. My father took on a part-time consulting job to augment their income, and my mother eventually realized they had been living beyond their means. Lucas and Sophia, meantime, were forced to confront their own beliefs about family support. Lucas contacted me 7 weeks after Christmas with a surprising news. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," said the man, "about how I never asked if you needed help. And you're right. I was so focused on my own problems that I never considered you might have your own." "I appreciate you saying that," I quipped. "I want to do better, and I want to start by asking, is there anything you need help with? Anything I can do to support you?" It was a basic question, but none of my siblings had asked it before. We ended up discussing my job aspirations, relationship with James, and future plans. For the first time as adults, Lucas appeared to be truly interested in my existence as a person, rather than as a family obligation. Sophia took her time waking up. She remained sensitive about the money issue, and appeared to interpret my boundary setting as a personal attack rather than a required shift. But even she began to change her mind, particularly after a talk with our grandma. Margaret had allegedly confronted both of my siblings about their treatment of me over the years. "Your sister has been sacrificing for this family while you two were building your careers," they'd heard her say. "The least you can do is treat her with the respect she deserves." My connection with my mother remained the most complex. She was definitely trying to change her behavior, but decades of set habits do not evaporate overnight. She'd catch herself in the middle of a criticism and apologize, or she'd try to ask about my work in a way that wasn't disparaging. It felt forced at first, but it eventually became more genuine. The real test came when James and I began planning our wedding. I'd been dreading the expected criticism and attempts to control the situation. To my astonishment, my mother kept most of her opinions to herself. When she did make suggestions, she prefaced them with phrases like, "just an idea," or "only if you think it would work." "I like the photographer you chose," she commented during one of our preparation sessions. "The samples you showed me are beautiful." It was such a simple, encouraging phrase that I nearly didn't know how to respond. This was what a good family interaction should look like. My father, on the other hand, plunged himself into wedding planning with an unexpected level of excitement. He volunteered to assist with costs, insisted on escorting me down the aisle, and spent hours researching locations and suppliers with me. It was as if he was attempting to make amends for years of ignoring my mother's criticisms. "I'm so proud of you," he told me one afternoon as we tried pastries from a city bakery. "Not just for standing up to your mother, but for building such a good life for yourself. James is a lucky man." Those remarks came from my father and meant everything. The biggest surprise was how many more family members contacted out to support me after hearing the whole tale. My Aunt Clara started phoning on a regular basis to check in. My cousin Lily asked if she could help with the wedding plans. Even some of my more distant relatives attempted to connect with me in ways they had never done before. "I always sensed there was tension," clarified my aunt, "but I never realized how bad it was. Your mother has always been intense, but I didn't know she was being so unfair to you." It turned out that various family members had seen the relationship over time, but had not felt comfortable intervening. My Christmas outburst had given them permission to confront what they had been witnessing but ignoring. The most significant adjustment occurred in my relationship with James's family. Without the continual drain of my own family's conflict, I was able to focus more emotional energy on developing relationships with his parents and siblings. They greeted me with an openness and warmth that I had never known. And for the first time, I realized what healthy family dynamics looked like. "Your family is so normal," I said James after a Sunday dinner with his parents, during which no one criticized anyone, and everyone appeared to be truly delighted to be there. "Yours can be too," he added. "It just takes time and boundaries." He was correct. Some of my family ties were slowly healing, with clear expectations and repercussions. Not all of them, and not entirely, but enough to give me hope that the future will be different than the past. 6 months after that Christmas meal, James and I got married in a quiet ceremony at a historic inn about an hour outside of town. The guest list was carefully vetted to include only those who had expressed real support for our relationship and respected both of us as individuals. My father accompanied me down the aisle, tears in his eyes. My grandmother sat on the front row, beaming with pride. My mother was also present, dressed wonderfully and behaving precisely, but I could tell she was struggling to keep her normal remark to herself. Lucas and Sophia both came, and they appeared really thrilled for us. But the folks who mattered the most were those who had always backed me. James's family, who had welcomed me since the beginning. My Aunt Clara and Cousin Lily had been valuable sources of emotional support. And my longtime friends, who had witnessed my battle with family dynamics for years and were overjoyed to see me finally standing up for myself. My grandmother hugged me after the ceremony and whispered, "You look radiant. Not just beautiful, but truly happy. That's what I've been waiting to see." During the reception, my father delivered a speech that moved me to tears. "Emma has always been the heart of our family," he told me, "even when we didn't appreciate her properly. She's kind, generous, hardworking, and loyal to a fault. James, you're not just marrying a wonderful woman. You're marrying someone who will move heaven and earth for the people she loves. I just hope you never take that for granted the way some of us have." It was his public admission of the years of unbalance, which meant everything to me. Even my mother was able to offer something appropriate during her quick words. "Emma, I'm sorry it took me so long to see what an amazing daughter I have. I hope you and James build a beautiful life together." Our relationship was not completely repaired, but we made progress. The most crucial moment of the day, however, occurred during our first dance. As James and I swayed to music in front of everyone who truly cared about us, I realized I was experiencing something I'd never felt before at a family gathering. Total, genuine happiness. "No regrets," James whispered into my ear. "None," I replied, and I meant it totally. The months that followed were revelatory. Marriage to James exceeded my expectations. We bought a house together with the money I'd saved since I quit financing my family's lifestyle. We traveled. We entertained our friends. We created our own traditions. My career grew in ways I never believed imaginable. Without the continual emotional drain of family conflict, I had more energy to devote to my profession than I had ever had before. I ran great campaigns, developed excellent client connections, and received the promotion my supervisor hinted at. The girl who had been labeled useless suddenly managed her own department. Some family connections improved gradually. My father and I formed a true bond, talking about everything from business, novels, and his new love of carpentry. Lucas made genuine efforts to be there in my life, calling to check in and even seeking my counsel on personal issues. My grandmother became one of my closest confidants, someone I could open up to about everything without fear of being judged. My relationship with my mother remained complex yet functioning. She still struggled with her tendency to criticize, but she caught herself more frequently and made genuine attempts to be supportive. When I told her I was thinking about going back to school for an MBA, she surprised me by saying, "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. You'd be excellent at it." It wasn't the enthusiastic support I might have gotten from Lucas or Sophia, but it was respectful and encouraging, which was more than I could have expected from her. Sophia and I reached a friendly but distant agreement. We were courteous at family gatherings and exchanged pleasantries, but we never formed the close friendship I wished for. That was fine though. I'd learned that not all family connections can be repaired. And that's not always a sign of personal failure. The most fundamental transformation occurred internally. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't always looking for approval or proving my value. I knew who I was, what I'd accomplished, and how I contributed to my relationships. James's love and respect taught me what it was like to be valued for who I truly was. And I had come to value myself in the same manner. One evening, nearly a year after our wedding, James and I were eating supper when my phone called. It was my mother, which was not unusual at the time, but there was something strange about her voice. "Emma, I need to tell you something," she said. "Your father and I were at the grocery store today, and I ran into Mrs. Thompson from down the street. She was asking about you, and I found myself telling her about your promotion and your new house, and how proud I am of you, and then I realized, I don't think I've ever actually told you that." "Told me what, Mom?" "That I'm proud of you. That I've always been proud of you, even when I was too stubborn or too focused on what I thought success should look like to admit it. You're an incredible woman, Emma. You're kind and strong and successful and generous, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say that out loud." I had been waiting for this conversation my entire life, and it arrived at a moment when I no longer required it to feel whole. However, the fact that it felt sincere rather than desperate added to its importance. "Thank you, Mom," I replied. "That means a lot." "I love you, sweetheart. I should have been saying that more often too." "I love you too." After I hung up, James smiled at me. "How does it feel?" "Good," I said, and I was astonished to learn I had meant it. It feels really good, but also I think I would have been okay either way. And it was the true victory, not that my family had finally learnt to respect me, which was amazing. The true accomplishment was that I had learned to respect myself enough to demand better treatment and create a life that did not rely on their approval for happiness. I had discovered that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to quit supporting bad behavior. I had discovered that financial and emotional independence went hand in hand. Most significantly, I discovered that the family you select can be just as essential as the one you're born into. Surrounding yourself with individuals who recognize your worth does not make you selfish. It makes you whole. The little girl who had spent her life trying to earn love had matured into a woman who understood that she was already deserving of love. That made a huge impact. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your support for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps someone else find the courage to speak their truth. Wishing you all the strength to know your worth and the courage to demand the respect you deserve. I ended my engagement to my fiancée. After she wanted a break to explore her ex, I sold our house and disappeared. Hello everyone. After what feels like an eternity, I, 27 million, decided it was time to discuss what has been going on with me recently. Here's the thing. Until lately, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, Tessa, 26F. We'd been together for 4 years, and for the most part, I thought we were solid. But now I'm sitting here, wondering why I didn't see this coming sooner. Tessa and I met at a birthday celebration, introduced by a mutual friend. She was humorous, confident, and had a no-nonsense approach that I enjoyed. I'd dated previously, but no one connected with me as she did. We hit it off quickly and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, as if we were all on the same page about professions, marriage, and eventually creating a family. She was a freelance graphic designer, and I worked as a project manager for a technology business, so our schedules were very similar. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was enjoyable. We had been discussing getting married for a time, but it wasn't until last year that I proposed. Nothing fancy, just a simple supper at home for the two of us. Tessa seems thrilled. She cried, hugged me, and agreed. That night, we began to envision our future. A fall wedding, a limited guest list, and this charming little site by the lake. It seemed like everything was falling into place, or so I thought. The initial red flags were little and evident. They were little sneaky flaws that I ignored because I didn't want to overthink. For example, Tessa's enthusiasm for wedding preparation faded after a few months. She was all in at first, sending me Pinterest boards, searching through wedding outfits, and asking about small details like whether I preferred tulips or roses for the centerpieces. But suddenly it simply stopped. I'd ask her questions like, "Hey, have you chosen your bridesmaids yet?" And she'd shrug it aside. "Not yet, I'm still thinking about it," she said again. The same thing happened with her clothing, cake, and music. Every decision we'd been so enthused about had become something she wanted to postpone. "There's still time," she'd say. The wedding seemed like an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Plus, Tessa had a lot going on at work. I assumed she'd snap out of it eventually. What I didn't realize was that her lack of enthusiasm wasn't about the wedding, but about us. The true slap in the face happened one night while we were out with some friends. Someone brought up the dumb TikTok game, which you've probably seen. It's the one where you have to answer personal questions while keeping a straight face and not passing judgment. Everything was going well until someone said, "If you could relive one relationship, which would it be?" Without thinking, Tessa responded, "Oh, probably Dylan." Just like that. Dylan. Her college ex. The person who cheated on her. The moment she uttered that, the room became awkwardly quiet. She giggled awkwardly and attempted to backtrack, saying, "I mean, not that I'd want to. It's just a significant element of my past." I wanted to confront her right there, but we were among friends, so I let it go. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about it. "What was it about Dylan? Why would you choose to revisit that relationship?" She simply shrugged it off as if it were no big thing. "It was a stupid game, Liam. Don't take it so seriously." She grinned and shifted the subject. I didn't press it because, honestly, I didn't want to start a battle over something that could have been minor. But, deep down, it stayed with me. Following that, her behavior became more difficult to ignore. She was using her phone more frequently, going through her texts with a cheeky little smile. She began creating vague explanations for why she couldn't hang out or why she would cancel plans at the last minute. "Oh, sorry, I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight," she'd typically remark. Or it may be, I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend. The justifications were not particularly suspicious, but they were stacking up. It seemed like I had become less of a priority. Then came Friday night, which changed everything. I arrived home from work early, excited to spend the evening with Tessa. I was hoping we might order in and binge watch something, a quiet night. When I came in, however, the atmosphere seemed odd. She was seated on the couch, holding her laptop, but she wasn't working. She was staring at the screen, absolutely unfocused. "Hey, I'm home," I murmured, hoping to relieve the tension. "You're early," she said, as if it were a negative thing. I shrugged it off and went into the kitchen to begin preparing dinner, but the silence in the house was oppressive. Usually, she'd ask how my day was or tell me about her own. What about tonight? Nothing. Finally, I looked around and asked, "Is everything okay?" She shut her laptop and glanced at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." And my stomach sank. You know how you feel when you know something horrible is going to happen but you can't stop it? That was me, standing there like an idiot with a spatula in one hand. I approached and sat across from her. "All right," I said. "What is going on?" She paused, as if she were trying to find the proper words. She just came out with it. "I've been thinking about us." "And about Dylan?" I swear that I almost laughed. "Dylan? Are you serious? What about him?" She bit her lip and avoided my gaze. "I suppose I need some time to consider things through. I'd like to take a break and see whether there's still something there with him." I couldn't believe what I heard. "Do you want to take a break and date your ex? Are you out of your mind, Tessa? We've got engaged." "It's not like that," she responded hurriedly, as if she could smooth things up. "I just want to know if I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I pledge to come back." That's when I discovered how deep her chutzpah was. She assumed I would sit around and wait for her to decide whether I was good enough. Something inside me moved at that very instant. I did not yell or blow up. I just sat there staring at her, wondering how the hell I hadn't seen this coming. I wasn't sure how to answer at first. My fiancée recently informed me that she wants to take a break to explore things with her ex, Dylan. What can you say to that? Finally, I asked. "So, what does this break mean to you?" My voice came out more calmer than I felt. She straightened up slightly, as if she had been ready for this conversation. "I believe we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if my feelings for Dylan are genuine, and you are welcome to ponder on us as well." I couldn't believe the audacity. "Wait," I replied, leaning forward. "You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to reflect on us? What kind of backwards logic is that?" Tessa sighed, as if I were the one acting unreasonable. "It's not about you doing something wrong, Liam. This is about me figuring out what I need." She seemed to have practiced this. The way she spoke, the way she avoided eye contact, it was as if she had already decided this was going to happen and simply wanted me to accept it. "You know this sounds insane, right?" I muttered. "You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play what if with some guy who treats you like garbage." Her face tightened, and for the first time, I realized how stubborn she could be. "I'm not asking for permission, Liam. I'm telling you what I need." That one landed differently. I wasn't just sad anymore, I was angry. I stood up and began pacing, hoping to calm myself down. "So what, Tessa? You're just going to pack a bag and head over to Dylan's place? Is that your big plan?" "No," she insisted. "It's not like that. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before we move forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the right decision." "You owe it to yourself?" I asked, laughing cruelly. "And what about what you owe me?" "We're engaged, Tessa. We're supposed to be building a life together, and now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough?" "I never said you weren't good enough," she replied, her voice rising. "But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain. And right now I'm not." That was it. She wasn't simply interested in exploring things with Dylan, she was also unsure about me. Even after 4 years together and all of our plans, she was still unsure. It struck me all at once. She hadn't realized how painful and stupid her plea was. She believed this was reasonable, that I'd just sit there while she figured out whatever foolishness was going through her head. I stopped pacing and glanced at her, really stared at her. "You know what?" "Sure," I responded, my tone bland. "Take your break." She blinked, surprised by how quickly I agreed. "Liam, I'm not trying to hurt you. I need space to figure things out." I nodded and kept my expression bland. "All right. If that's what you need." She paused, as if she expected me to argue or fight for her. When I didn't, she stood up, took out her laptop, and murmured, "I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time." "Okay," I replied simply. She looked at me, wondering how to answer, and then disappeared into the bedroom. I could hear her moving around and throwing items into a bag. I remained calm on the couch, but my mind was already turning. If she really wants a break, that's okay. Let her have it. Several minutes later, I heard the front door close. She was gone, perhaps believing she had abandoned me here to wait and worry. She had no idea I was not going to sit around and do nothing. She could have her fantasy, but I had other ideas now. I'll provide an update once I've set some things in motion. This is not going to end the way she expects it to. Update 1. Thank you for your feedback and suggestions on my last post. A lot has happened this week, and I'd like to report how things are going. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone in this community for their wonderful support. Many of you mentioned that I don't just sit around waiting, and you were correct. I've been busy putting everything into motion. First, I called my pal Noah. He's been my best friend since college, and he's not the type of man to sugarcoat things. After hearing the full story, he brought over pizza, and we spent the entire night scheming. "Dude, you realize she's going to try to crawl back once things don't work out with Dylan, right?" Noah reminded him. He was correct, of course. The more we talked, the more obvious it became that I needed to be proactive. This was not about vengeance, it was about regaining control of my life. I began with the house. Tessa doesn't seem to recall that it's entirely in my name. She loves to act as if it's our home, always talking about the curtains and paint colors she chose, yet I'm the one who pays the mortgage. I phoned a realtor first thing Monday morning. The realtor came by to see the property, and we decided to list it right away. The market in our neighborhood is now hot, and we already have several potential purchasers. Tessa has no idea. She probably believes I'm sitting here in our shared home, waiting for her to sort out her feelings. The next step was to gradually remove her from my life. You remember the Live Laugh Love placards she insisted on putting up? Gone. Did she have to have those beautiful throw pillows? Donated. Her clothing and personal belongings that she left behind? I carefully packaged them all up. But this is where I became strategic. Instead of just dropping her belongings off at her mother's house or having her come fetch them, I hired a moving company. They took everything to her mother's house and left a short note. "Here's your stuff. Good luck with Dylan." I know some of you may think this is petty, but I disagree. I'm not being vengeful, I'm being efficient. She wanted some room to think things through? Well, she's got it, literally. The most fascinating moment came when mutual friends began asking questions. Instead of playing the victim or slandering her, I simply stated the truth. Tessa decided she needed to explore things with her ex before committing to marriage. I decided I deserve better than being someone's backup plan. You should watch how people respond to that. No drama, no accusations, just facts. It's amazing how rapidly the story changes when you don't try to control it. I've also been making moves at work. I applied for a position at our West Coast office that I'd been considering for a long time. If the house sells, which seems quite likely, and I get this job, I'll be starting over on the other side of the country. Tessa has attempted to contact me several times this week, first with light-hearted texts like, "Hope you're doing okay," and progressing to progressively concerned messages when she learned I was actually making changes rather than simply waiting around. Yesterday, she was in a panic when her mother informed her that the boxes had been delivered. "What are you doing? Why are you acting like this is over?" I kept my response simple. "Because it is over, Tessa. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She began crying, claiming that she simply wanted time to figure things out, that I was being quick, and that this was not what she meant when she asked for a break. "What did you expect?" I questioned her. "That I'd sit here like a faithful puppy while you test drove your ex? That's not how this works." "But what if I realize you're the one I want?" She was weeping. "Then you'll have learned a valuable lesson about not taking people for granted," I said before hanging up the phone. The weird thing is that I'm no longer upset. Instead, I feel liberated. Every box I pack, every move I make feels like I'm reclaiming parts of myself that I didn't realize I'd given up. Noah came by again yesterday to assist me with packing the house. He also saw the change in me. "You seem different," he observed. "More focused?" He's correct. I'm different. When Tessa first revealed her desire to pursue things with Dylan, I felt like my world was falling. Now I see it wasn't my world collapsing, but rather the false reality I'd been living in finally disintegrating. I have more things in the works, but I will hold them for the next update. For the time being, I'll simply say this. Sometimes the greatest way to respond to someone treating you as an option is to completely remove yourself from their list of options. Stay tuned. This narrative hasn't ended yet, and I have a feeling Tessa is finding that her break to straighten things out isn't going to go nearly as planned. Update 2. I appreciate all of the feedback on my recent update. Things have escalated significantly, and I'd like to tell you how the situation has evolved. Remember how I mentioned applying for the West Coast position? Okay, I got it. The timing could not be better. The house is under contract, and the closing is slated for next month. But that's only the beginning. What's particularly interesting is how Tessa's Dylan exploration is unfolding. Through mutual connections, I discovered that their restored passion isn't quite the fairy tale she envisioned. Apparently, 4 years haven't changed him much. He's still the untrustworthy guy who cheated on her in college. But here's when it gets good. Tessa has attempted to control the narrative on social media. She has been sharing vague, inspiring phrases about finding yourself and following your heart. So I decided to play the same game, but with a twist. I created a single factual post. Update on my life. Excited to announce I've accepted a position in San Francisco. Sometimes when one door closes, better ones open. Looking forward to this new chapter. The comments and texts began pouring in. People congratulated me, inquired about the relocation, and, of course, wondered about Tessa. I kept my answers basic and honest. We're no longer together. She wanted to explore other options, so I'm exploring mine too. This set off a fantastic chain reaction in our social circle. Remember those friends who weren't sure about the situation? Watching me handle this with grace as Tessa shares cryptic relationship quotations completely changed the atmosphere. Then came the professional consequences. Tessa's freelance design employment is primarily based on recommendations and networking. Sarah, 29F, a mutual contact in the computer field who used to refer many clients to Tessa, contacted me. I need to know what happened, Sarah explained over coffee. Tessa's telling people you're having a temporary separation to grow individually, but something feels off. I shared Tessa's note about wanting to date Dylan. Sarah's look said it all. She did not believe it. By the end of the week, numerous potential clients had pushed back their projects with Tessa, not because I said anything nasty, but because, honestly, who wants to work with someone who takes commitment so lightly? Tessa sensed the shift. Her texts become more frequent and frantic. Why are you telling people about Dylan? You're ruining my reputation. This isn't fair, I just needed time to think. I answered to the last one. You got what you wanted, time and space, how I spend mine is no longer your concern. Then came the turning point. Dylan, in his wonderful wisdom, shared a photo of them together at the restaurant where Tessa and I had our first date. It was evident she was attempting to recreate our history with him. It was both sad and funny. The post didn't last long, but the damage was done. Our friends witnessed it, and the remaining few individuals who supported Tessa's finding myself story lost respect for her. Even her own sister contacted me. I'm so sorry about how she's handling this. You deserve better. What is the most satisfying part? I didn't have to be vengeful. I simply lived my life freely and honestly, whereas Tessa attempted to play both sides. The truth has a way of emerging. She visited my office yesterday. Dylan seemed to have already revealed his true colors, flirting with other women, being untrustworthy, a familiar story. She was crying. I made a huge mistake, she cried. I was scared of commitment. I thought I needed to know if there was something better out there, but I was wrong. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I simply gazed at her calmly. No, Tessa. The best thing that ever happened to me was you showing your true colors before we got married. She attempted to argue, claiming that we could fix this, that she would go to counseling, and that she would prove she could be trusted again. I simply shook my head. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about Dylan anymore. This is about you thinking you could keep me as a backup while you explore your options. That's not love, that's convenience. She left my office distraught, but I felt better than ever. The house closes next week, the majority of my belongings are packed, and my new life in San Francisco begins in a month. The funny thing is that some folks think I'm being overly tough. Everyone makes mistakes, they explain. However, this was not a mistake, it was a choice. There are actually several options available. Each time she texted Dylan. Every time, she lied about where she was. She spent every second planning to put our romance on hold. These were all options. I'll provide another update once the move is complete. For the time being, I'll leave you with this. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but rather getting better. And this is exactly what I'm doing. Next update. Update 3. Thank you for following my journey. This will be my final update, and I have some interesting developments to report. San Francisco is everything I imagined it would be. My new apartment has a stunning view of the bay, and the tech scene here is fantastic. My new office team is fantastic. It's refreshing to be around people who prioritize growth and innovation over drama. But first, let me catch you up on how things ended back home. The closing went smoothly, and the house actually sold for more than the asking price. It was interesting to see Tessa's reaction after finding out through mutual friends. She didn't believe I'd sold the house until she drove by and saw the new owners move in. Here's where it got really interesting. Remember Dylan? He reached out to me, of all people. He sent me a long message about how he never meant to cause problems and that Tessa had contacted him first, months before she requested the break. Tessa had been planning her little exploration for quite some time. She had been messaging Dylan for months, carefully laying the groundwork for her backup strategy. What's with the irony? Dylan ended their relationship because, as he put it, if she could do this to you, she could do it to anyone. Tessa's professional fallout has been significant. Remember all the clients she'd lined up? Most of them discovered other designers, not because I said anything, but because word spreads in the industry. One of her largest clients really contacted me. We heard what happened with the engagement, they told us. We're looking for someone who can commit to long-term projects. Do you know any reliable designers? I recommended a talented acquaintance of mine, and she received the contract. Karma, I suppose. Tessa's social media meltdown has been something to see. Then came the sorrowful quotations about losing your sweetheart, followed by angry posts about toxic people who can't handle growth. Finally, she made urgent attempts to show everyone how delighted she was. The final one was quite interesting. She wrote about beginning her own design firm. 3 days later, she began sending out job applications. Last week, her sister contacted me again. Tessa has apparently been staying with their parents, stating she needs time to heal from our separation. Her sister's exact words were, "She really thought you'd wait for her. When you sold the house and moved, it broke her fantasy completely." The most reassuring moment occurred during a video call with our old friend group. They were telling me about local gossip, and someone described seeing Tessa at a coffee shop, explaining to a potential customer why her portfolio website was down. Apparently, she forgot that I was the one who set it up and maintained it. She couldn't figure out how to restore her hosting membership when it expired. Not my concern anymore. My new life here is coming together well. I've joined a local rock climbing club, begun taking Spanish lessons, and even adopted a dog from a local shelter. His name is Zeus, and he's a greater companion than my ex-fiancée. The tech community here is really inviting. Last week, I was invited to speak at a developer conference, which would not have happened if I had stayed at home. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not dragging dead weight. I had one last interaction with Tessa. She sent me an email requesting some old images from our shared cloud storage. I had previously downloaded what I wanted and terminated the account several weeks ago. Her email stated, "I know you're trying to erase me from your life, but you can't just delete our memories. Those 4 years meant something." My reply was simple. "You're right. Those years taught me what I don't want in a partner. Thanks for the lesson." Some mutual acquaintances believe I am being very harsh and should be more understanding of her moment of confusion. However, that wasn't a moment. It was a calculated decision to keep me as a safety net while she pursued what she believed to be a better option. What is the most important thing I've learned from all of this? Sometimes the worst things that happen to you result in the best outcomes. If Tessa hadn't shown her true colors, I could have married her, only to learn her genuine personality years later, possibly with children in the mix. Instead, I'm in a lovely city with a wonderful job, making new friends, and feeling optimistic about the future. The anguish of betrayal has been replaced by thankfulness for the gunshot avoided. Thank you to everyone who has followed the story and offered advice. Your encouragement helped me remain strong when I might have faltered. And for anyone going through a similar situation, know this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait around for them to alter their mind about you. Life is too short to be someone's backup plan. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and make things better for yourself. That's it for now, guys. This chapter of my life has officially ended, and I couldn't be more excited for the next one to begin. Take care, and thank you for everything. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I got uninvited from my mom's birthday because I didn't look good next to my sister's boyfriend. Turns out, I was actually his boss. He looked me in the eye and said, "If you still insist on coming home, then don't call me your father." 3 weeks later, the power, water, and internet in their house all shut off, on my mom's birthday. Follow my narrative, perhaps you will recognize yourself in it. Hello, this is Ryan. I'm 30 years old and reside in a little town around 40 minutes from Seattle. Every morning, I make myself a cup of coffee, put on the weather, and drive less than 10 minutes to work. I co-founded a small technology company focused on sustainable energy. Not everyone understands what I do, including my family. They still think I spend my days tightening screws and repairing machinery, which I don't mind. I have never felt the need to explain. When someone asks about my family, my parents or my sister Jessica, I smile slightly. It's been a while since we talked, I remarked, and that's it. I'm not hiding anything, but I don't see the sense in retelling it anymore. I haven't contacted them in over 2 years. No calls, texts, holidays, or birthdays, nothing. Just a long calm stretch, as if the connection between us had been severed and no one tried to repair it. I used to feel that family was everything. But 2 years ago, on my mother's birthday, everything changed. 2 years ago, 3 weeks before my mother's birthday, I had just booked a trip and taken time off work. The plan was simple: go home early, stay for a few days, and help with preparations, just like every other year. Nothing extraordinary. I just wanted to let them know. I contacted my mother right away, but my father answered after only 2 rings. "I'll be home 2 days early," I announced nonchalantly. "If there's anything you need me to pick up or help with, just let me know." He initially responded vaguely, but then hesitated. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded strange, heavier than normal, as if he was attempting to avoid something. "Ryan, if possible, maybe don't come home this year." At the time, I assumed he was just concerned about my schedule. "It's fine, Dad," I said, still clutching a steaming mug of coffee. "I've got everything sorted, it's no trouble." The pause was longer this time. Then he spoke again, firmer, but colder. "Jessica's bringing her boyfriend home this year. He's a manager, someone important. Speaks well and carries himself properly. And your job, well, it isn't very comfortable to talk about, so it's best if you don't come." At that point, I felt heat rising from the back of my neck to my face. My heartbeat quickened, and I automatically grasped my coffee mug closer. "What the hell did you just say?" I exclaimed, unable to keep my voice calm. "Are you seriously saying that to me right now?" He didn't dispute it, take it back, or soften. Instead, he responded plainly and sharply. "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you insist on coming, don't call me your father." And then he disconnected up without a moment's pause. I put the phone down. My palm was still shaking and somewhat sticky from sweat. The apartment was completely silent, no TV, no footsteps, just me standing there, staring into space like I'd been plucked out of my life. His words kept echoing in my head, slow and clear, like a recording stuck on repeat. "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you still insist on coming back, don't call me your father." For a moment, I wondered if I had misheard him, but no. Every word and tone was cold as ice and solid as stone. There was no slip of the tongue and no room for hope. I clenched my jaw, my throat tightening as if something had lodged there and refused to move. Right immediately, memories began to flood back. I silently paid all of their bills, including electricity, water, and internet, for more than 2 years. Nobody ever mentioned anything, and now they're calling me the family's shame. I quickly took up my phone, my hands still slightly trembling, despite the fact that my mind had begun to cool. I opened the banking app and went down to see my transaction history. My only purpose was to see how much I had spent on my family over the previous 2 years. I needed a number for my power bill, water bill, and internet service, every month, without fail. Each payment was handled on schedule and automatically deducted from my account. For 2 years in a row, nearly $400 per month has been paid without fail. I gently scrolled to the very bottom. Total amount spent, $9,842.17. I stared at that number for a few more seconds, not because I was astonished, but because something inside my chest had suddenly settled. Not grief, not even fury, but just empty space. Nearly $10,000, and now they label me the family's shame. As I glanced at the enormous list of bank transactions, a silent question arose, one that no one in my family had posed in 30 years. Has Jessica ever done as much for our parents as I have? It was not jealousy, and I was not looking for credit. It was merely that if I am deemed the family's shame, who is that standard being evaluated against? I had paid approximately $10,000 in living expenses for them secretly, without asking for anything in return, and without ever mentioning it. What about her? Has she ever had to make a sacrifice or begged for help? Or did she arrive, smile pretty, and make an impact in a lovely dress while holding a successful boyfriend? I was not asking to keep score. I was asking because, for the first time, I noticed that fairness was never considered in this household. I'd grown accustomed to standing on the sidelines since I was a child. In family photos, I was frequently partially hidden behind someone else or captured at the edge of the frame. I wasn't exactly gazing at the camera. Nobody ever told me to step aside, but I always did. Jessica was at the center of every important event in our family, from birthdays and graduations to her breakups. There was always a reason for everyone to band together, console, and celebrate her. I can't recall the last time somebody inquired if I was okay. Jessica is 2 years older than me, but the difference between us was never about age. She was the hope, the future-oriented child that our parents proudly mentioned when relatives visited. And me? In the same talks, if I was mentioned at all, it was as a short footnote. Ryan. Oh, he's fine. I believe he works in technology. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, remained out of trouble, and quietly handled everything, they'd eventually see me. However, they didn't. It turns out that when you're used to being invisible, nobody notices when you leave. I began covering my parents' utility costs, electricity, water, and internet, nearly 2 years ago. My mother called first, and everything started there. That day, she moaned about how the cost of living had risen, how this month's bills had unexpectedly increased, and how their retirement income was no longer sufficient. Then, gently and hesitantly, she said, "If you could help us even a little, it would mean a lot." I agreed. At the time, I assumed it would be only a few months until things settled down. However, the months that followed looked precisely like the previous one. Nobody mentioned terminating it, and there was no backup plan. Every now and then, I'd ask, "Is Jessica helping out at all, Mom?" She'd always evade the topic. Sometimes she'd say, "Just help us this month, your sister will pitch in next time." Other times, "Your sister's covering Dad's medical stuff, that's not easy either." I heard those lines so many times I could recite them by heart, and I just smiled and let it go every time, because I knew none of it was true. So I kept sending the money, nearly $400 per month, reliably and quietly, without complaint. Nobody mentioned it. It wasn't that I didn't care, it was simply that I felt it was the correct thing to do. I used to think that if I was quiet and responsible enough, they would notice. But today, after everything, they look at me and say, I'm the family's shame. After a time, everything around me was silent, and I just sat there, paralyzed on the couch. I still had my phone in my hand. I wasn't angry or heartbroken anymore. There was only one clear emotion sitting in my chest, something like, that's enough. Following that, I opened my banking app. I scrolled down to the automatic payments section, where I had set up monthly transfers to cover my parents' expenses for power, water, and internet. I tapped into each thing one by one and canceled them without hesitation. I did it softly, not to avenge myself, but to preserve the one thing I still had. A semblance of self-esteem, the only thing they hadn't taken away from me. About a week later, I received the first message from my mother, in the same soothing tone she always used. There was no mention of what had happened, nor was there an apology. "I just got a notice that the internet bill is due. Can you take care of it?" I read the message, glanced at the screen for a time, and then placed the phone down without responding. Not because I was attempting to make a statement, but because, after all, the first thing they thought to say was a request. Pay the internet bill. There was no, "Are you okay?" or even a basic, "Can we talk?" So I remained silent, and that silence, to me, said everything. 2 weeks later, my father called. The phone rang a few times before stopping. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, he left a voicemail. His tone was sharp and impatient, as it usually had been. The power company called. "This month's bill hasn't been paid. What's going on?" There was no worry, no mention of what he said the day I called to say I'd be home for Mom's birthday. I listened to the message, then turned off the screen and placed the phone face down on the table. And just like that, I remained silent until my mother's birthday. My mother's birthday was around 3 weeks after my father advised me not to come home. The party went on as normal, with her favorite roasted chicken, cake from her favorite bakery, and a few close relatives gathering around the dinner table. Except for me, everything had been meticulously planned and executed. That afternoon, at precisely 4 p.m., I was sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold when my phone chimed. It was my mother calling. I gazed at her name on the screen for a few seconds before putting the phone down. I didn't respond, didn't even think twice. My dad called a few minutes later, followed by Jessica. 3 calls in less than 10 minutes, I let them all go. There is no curiosity, No one a reply. I stayed where I was, leaning lightly against the back of the chair, my gaze fixed on the fogged-up glass. The sky outside was a drab gray. No rain, but cold in that silent, creeping manner that suggests winter has just brushed up against your threshold. The communications began to arrive approximately 10 minutes later. Mom was first. Ryan, the power has been turned off. The entire house is dark. Please pay the bill. I picked up the phone and read her message in silence. There was no anger or surprise, just a calm hollowness creeping through my chest, the type you get when you've spent years caring for a family and you're the only one left to bear the burden. Then my father said, "No water, we can't cook. Handle it now." Following that, Jessica replied, "Internet's down. Guests are arriving. Please fix this, urgently." I looked at the clock, 5:12 p.m. I remembered clearly. I canceled all automatic payments exactly 3 weeks ago, immediately after my father informed me that if I insisted on coming home, I should never call him Dad again. And now, in the midst of the birthday party they had instructed me not to attend, everything began to shut down: power, water, and the internet. Each one vanished just when they needed it most. I didn't text back or call. I didn't feel the need to explain. I merely sat there, carefully rotating the cold coffee cup in my hands, my eyes still fixed on the window, as if seeing past all I could see. And in that moment, I realized they weren't phoning because they missed me. They were calling because there was no one left to shoulder their weight. Around 6 p.m., my phone began buzzing again, this time nonstop. Yet it wasn't my parents or Jessica anymore. It was the relatives, who only visit on holidays yet feel entitled to pass judgment. The communications arrived in waves. Some people labeled me disrespectful. One remarked openly, "You embarrassed your mother in front of the whole family." Another, more subtle but just as devastating, said, "Your sister was right, people like you shouldn't show up on a happy day." I read through each message without responding, not because quiet implied agreement, but because I'd grown tired of explaining myself to people who always chose the louder throng above what was right. I was about to put down the phone when the screen lit up again. Aunt Lauren was the only family member who still trusted me. She was calling on video via an ancient app that only she and I still used because we were the only ones who cared enough to look each other in the eyes when it counted. I paused for a bit before answering on the second ring. The first thing I saw was her face, somewhat obscured by the yellow illumination from the kitchen behind her, a location I knew like the back of my hand. Every crack in the wall and every noisy cabinet. But tonight the room felt different. There were clinks of silverware, uneasy laughs, and random small conversation in the background. She glanced at me through the screen, her eyes warm and troubled. "You're not going to pay for it, Ryan." Her tone was light, as if she were trying to figure out what was going on. I peered into her eyes, and when I finally spoke, my tone was sluggish, as if I was dragging up something I had buried for too long. "You know, Auntie, it was Dad. Told me not to come." I gulped hard. He said if I still insisted on showing up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore. She became quiet. Her eyes changed, as if she was studying the room behind her. Right then, the call devolved into mayhem. I could hear my mother's voice through the noise. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. On this day, of all days, how could he do this?" My father said sharply and loudly, "It's not that serious, it's just paying a few bills. What kind of man gets petty over money?" Another voice, I believe it was my uncle. "Poor Jessica, having to deal with a brother like that." Footsteps approached the camera. Jessica appeared behind Aunt Lauren, arms folded and lips twisted with annoyance. "He even picked up the call? Mom's been crying all day, does he even care? Seriously, no shame at all." I didn't say anything. I just observed and remained silent, as if it were the only way to defend myself. I departed. Just as I was ready to end the call, another face came on the left side of the screen. A young man with perfectly combed hair and a dark suit. He stared at me with confusion in his eyes, then smiled hesitantly. "Hey boss," he replied, his voice somewhat scratchy, as if he wasn't sure if the words belonged in this situation. I froze. My gaze remained fixed on the screen, and I unconsciously grabbed the phone closer. I had not expected this. Not here, not on the night when everyone felt I was too much of a shame to be invited. I stared at him for a few seconds longer, and then it all clicked. His expression, the way he spoke. Of course, he was one of the new personnel who had lately transferred from our southern branch. We'd exchanged a few emails and he'd sent me 2 reports, but I had no idea he was Jessica's boyfriend, the one everyone was trying to impress. The room behind Aunt Lauren appeared to hold its breath. I noticed her look over her shoulder, and the kitchen erupted in a frantic commotion. Then someone said quietly, "Wait, What did he just call Ryan? Another voice followed, confused. Boss? Does that mean Ryan is Jessica's boyfriend's boss? The whispers grew like a rising wave, overlapping and uneasy. And me? I just kept looking at the screen. No nod, no denial. I am simply waiting to see where it goes. And right then, the young man stood up straighter, looked past the camera to the others in the room, and spoke plainly. In case you didn't know, I work at Pacific TerraTech. Mr. Ryan is one of the company's co-founders. His remarks were crisp and obvious, loud enough to cut through the clatter of dishes and murmuring, and the room fell into an unusual quiet. It's not awkward, simply stunned. I still did not say anything. I pushed my lips together and gave a soft nod of confirmation. He returned his gaze to the computer, eyes wide, and I said calmly, evenly, as if the words had been waiting for him, "Hope your big introduction goes perfectly." Then I disconnected up. That night, I slept soundly, no tossing and turning, no jolting up in the dark with old questions replaying through my mind. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not from satisfaction, but because they finally recognized who I was. The next day, before the sunlight had fully filtered through the thin curtains, I went for my phone and checked my emails as usual. A few meeting reminders, a couple of accounting comments, and then I noticed a name I didn't recognize in the from field. Hudson Kane. I opened the email. The first line struck me immediately. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were Jessica's brother. I've always respected you at the company." I arched an eyebrow, leaned into the pillow, and continued reading. Hudson wrote that he had been truly astonished to discover of the family link between me and Jessica, and then without sidestepping or softening it, he stated, "I didn't expect her to be like that. I'll be ending this relationship. Thank you for not putting me on the spot before everyone." I laid the phone on my chest and closed my eyes briefly. It took me a few minutes to reopen the inbox and begin typing my response, slowly, clearly, and without embellishment. "Hudson, that's your matter. I don't expect anyone to make decisions to stay in my good graces. Think carefully before you do anything. And for the record, I don't bring family into the workplace." I pressed send. No more thought, no lingering emotion. For me, that was sufficient. Some things, once clarified, I don't require anything else. Around 10 a.m., while I was winding up a meeting with the department heads and taking notes, my phone rang in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the name Jessica, my sister. I stared at it for a few seconds before hitting decline, not out of rage, not to make a point, but simply because I'd had enough of apologies that only appeared after everything had already come apart. Within 5 minutes, a message arrived. "I'm sorry. I didn't think Hudson would change like that. You're his boss. If you said something, I'm sure he'd listen. Please talk to him. Ask him to come back to me." After reading it, I approached the hallway window and leaned against it. I reviewed the message several times before typing my response, which was neither too long nor too short for her to understand. "Hudson didn't leave because I told him to. He left because of how you live, how you treat people, how you look down on what you don't understand, and how you always assume that with a soft enough voice you can steer anyone." I pressed send, put the phone back in my pocket, and returned to my desk. However, less than a minute later, another message arrived. "I know I messed up. This time, I mean it. I'll change. Please believe me, just this once." I did not respond. I read it, sat with it for a bit, and nothing moved inside me, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Sometimes the distance between two people isn't in the apology. It's in when the apology arrives. I gently deleted the message, leaving nothing behind, and returned to my current life. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, as I walked back into the home from the garage, I froze on the porch. My parents stood at the front door, each holding a little suitcase, their faces drawn with exhaustion from the long travel. I didn't ask why they were here. If they'd traveled all the way out to see me, it wasn't a casual visit. I opened the door and welcomed them in. No tension, no forced politeness, just a simple choice. I didn't want to have that conversation outside, where the wind was picking up on the porch. We sat in the living room, and the tea on the table was still steaming. My father talked first. He apologized in a quieter tone than normal. My mother added to it, saying they'd thought things through, perhaps they'd gone too far, and things should never have come to this point. I remained silent and did not interfere, just listening to see if this apology marked the end of something or the beginning of something else. And, as I expected, my father's tone changed. "We're family, Ryan, and family helps each other. We raised you, sent you to school, everything you have now, a part of it comes from us, right?" I looked at him. My countenance remained unchanged, but my stance straightened somewhat. Then my mother spoke, her voice quiet, as if she were saying something quite sensible. If you could maybe send us about $2,000 a month, just a little support. It's not much for someone like you. I stared at the two people sitting in my living room, the same people who had once kicked me out of a family event because they thought I was an embarrassment. And now they were sitting in my house, placing a monetary value on their apology. $2,000 each month, because I was their son. And to them, my success was a debt that I owed them. Following their request, I let out a quiet chuckle, not loud or snarky, but the type you get when someone tells you a story that doesn't make sense. I looked at my parents. Their eyes were fixated on mine, as if they expected me to nod in accord. But I wasn't angry. I'd come too far to be bothered by stuff like this. I leaned back in the chair, my voice calm and clear. What about Jessica? How much will she be contributing each month? The room appeared to pause at that point. The air tightened. My father cast a peek at my mother. She responded slowly, her voice falling slightly. Your sister's job, it's still unstable. And the breakup with Hudson has taken a toll on her. I nodded softly, not surprised. The same old excuses dressed in empathic language, but they were merely deflections. I raised my gaze, looked squarely at them, and said, if she agrees to support you with $2,000 per month, I'll do the same, no more, no less. They didn't say anything, just gazed at me, trying to figure out if I was serious. I went on quietly. Or, if you want me to carry the full amount, I'll need something in writing. A legal agreement confirming that after you both pass, the house will belong to me in full. I sat still after that, no pressure, no further explanation, just waited to see how they'd react now that, for the first time, I was establishing the terms for something they'd always felt was my responsibility. As soon as I finished speaking, the audience fell into a deep, dense quiet. My father suddenly rose to his feet. He smashed his palm down on the hardwood table, tipping the teacup over and pouring its contents down the side. His shout echoed around the room, his chest rising and falling in fury. You're setting conditions for your parents? We raised you for over 20 years, and now you want to nickel and dime us like this? What kind of life are you living, huh? He was shouting so loudly that I wasn't surprised if the folks next door heard everything. I didn't move or flinch. I just sat there, hands resting on the chair's armrests, gaze fixed on him, not cold, but no longer gentle. I waited for him to finish before standing up carefully. My voice came out low and calm, yet clear enough to pierce through the chaos he'd just created. I think you both should leave my house. It was not a threat. It was not spoken in anger. It was merely a plea from someone who had reached the limits of what respect could provide. No one said anything else, only the sound of baggage dragging across the hardwood floor and the door clicking shut behind them, quieter than all they had just left inside me. It's been 2 years since I last saw them, right here in my own home. I did not ban their phone numbers, change my email address, or cut them off totally. I stopped reaching out and waited. I waited to see if they would still consider me a member of the family after I was no longer under the shadow of duty and obligation. In the past 2 years, there has been no call or message inquiring how I've been, no mention of birthdays, health, or even a basic "how are you doing?" I used to believe that one day, they will change. However, I've realized that not everyone changes, especially those who have never recognized they were wrong in the first place. I still live here, work, and go about my daily existence. The only difference is that I no longer allow myself to be an emotional ATM, eager to give and be damaged in the name of obligation. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family is not a place where people can demand kindness and call it love. A real family is one in which you are valued as a person regardless of what you have to offer. Not as a wallet, not as a backup plan. Not as a last resort when everything else fails. And before I end this chapter, I'd like to ask you a question. Was I wrong to decide not to return? For refusing to assist my parents with $2,000 per month, despite the fact that they are now elderly and reared me. I used to believe that my family could fix anything. But after being treated like a stranger in my own home more times than I can count, I chose to stand up and break the cycle. Was I overly cold? Perhaps I was finally learning to appreciate myself at the perfect time. Please leave your opinions below. I sincerely want to hear from you, whether you agree or disagree. If the tale resonated with you, please subscribe to help support the channel. There are still many stories waiting to be told and heard. Take care, and see you in the next one. Thank you for staying till the end. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hello everyone, before we start today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello people. I've been skimming through the posts here for a while, believing I'd never have my own tale to tell. However, life has a way of shocking you, and I've been lugging this about for months. I need to let it out. Let me be clear, I've never been the sort to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and I have been together for 6 years and married for 4. Things were solid, or so I thought. We experienced the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think, oh, there's a problem here. In reality, throughout the majority of our relationship, we were that couple, completely committed colleagues. We laughed at stupid inside jokes, argued for hours about which movie to watch, and had a cadence that just worked. She'd organize elaborate date nights, and I'd treat her to her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless. As if we had figured out the whole love thing. That is why what occurred next struck me like a ton of bricks. The shift around 6 months ago, things began to alter. At first, it was minor details. Things you'd likely miss if you weren't paying attention. She began carrying her phone everywhere, even when she was only going to the kitchen or folding clothes. Before this, her phone would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she didn't mind who picked it up. One day I made this joke. "What, are you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled and added, "No, work's been emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But, a few days later, she created a password. That one caught me off surprise because she had never used it before. When I casually inquired why, she responded something vague about security and hackers. I didn't press it since I didn't want to appear paranoid, but it simply felt off. And it did not end there. She began taking calls outside the room, which she had never done before. It wasn't subtle either. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or outside on the porch. If I inquired who it was, she would just say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit. Keeping her phone face down on the table. I had no idea that was a thing until I reached over to give her something and she hastily moved her phone out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, yet it stayed with me. Growing distance. However, it wasn't all about the phone. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, such as where should we go for our anniversary? Or, do you think we should start saving for a new car? She'd simply nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before shifting the subject. It all came together for me on a random Wednesday. She informed me that she was seeing a buddy for coffee after work. It didn't sound strange, she does that occasionally. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I figured, why not surprise her? It will be cute. When I arrived, however, she was not with her friend. She stood outside the cafe, walking back and forth, her phone placed against her ear. I remained in my car because something about the way she spoke seemed serious. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't figure out what she was saying, but it didn't sound like job or friend conflict. It sounded grander, like something she had planned. When she returned home, I asked her how her coffee date went, attempting to maintain a casual tone. She told me a complete narrative about her pal complaining about her boyfriend. It was such an unexpected comment that I just gazed at her for a second. "What do you mean?" I inquired. She shrugged. "I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, like all our account info, passwords, documents, that kind of thing, just in case of emergency." I wasn't sure what to say. This was something we'd never discussed before, and the timing seemed strange given everything else I'd noticed. "What kind of emergencies?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone casual. She shrugged again. "It's just smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us? Or what if we need to make a big financial decision quickly?" Her argument made sense on the surface, but something about the way she expressed it made me nervous. It was too rehearsed and polished, as if she had been waiting for the appropriate time to bring it up. I nodded and murmured something like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea," but within, alarms were ringing. Why now? Why are we suddenly concerned about arranging our finances when we've always kept them separate and loose? That night, my mind kept reliving her words, attempting to figure out what it meant. Was this just typical adult behavior, and was I reading too much into it? But then I remembered the phone calls, the talk I overheard in the cafe, and how distant she'd been recently. It all began to mount up, and I did not like the image it was painting. Until then, I had done nothing about it. A few days later, she mentioned it again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was looking through her phone, when she remarked, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up the finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up from her phone, astonished that I had pressed her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she responded hastily, making me giggle. "I just think it's important, that's all, for emergencies." "Emergencies? Like what?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. Just life stuff. It's not a big deal. I promise, I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her response seemed ambiguous. Too vague. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided providing a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It didn't seem like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was concealing something, but I had no idea what it was. So, the next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I opened our joint account online and discovered something unexpected. Over the last month, a few tiny moves had taken place. Nothing large, but small quantities that did not appear to have a clear purpose. They were not designated for bills, groceries, or anything similar. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it appeared that she had been withdrawing money from the account for some reason, which I couldn't figure out. I considered addressing her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous. And if I was correct, I had to be careful. It was eating at me, so I contacted someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him what I'd discovered while trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. "Look," he remarked after I'd explained everything. "I'm not saying something is absolutely going on, but you're not insane for wanting to be ready. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now is the moment to do so. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through what I could do, simple procedures to ensure my finances were protected if something happened. I'll admit that taking such drastic action felt out of the ordinary. It felt like I was preparing for something dreadful even though I wasn't sure what was wrong. But the more I considered it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was beginning to suspect she was, I needed to defend myself. It was not an easy decision to make, however. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about the life we had created together. I kept repeating images in my head, our wedding day, the late-night conversations about our dreams, and the weird little jokes we shared. How did we arrive here? Is this what our marriage had come to? The prospect of taking these measures felt like conceding defeat, as if I was officially abandoning the trust we previously shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and took out my laptop. My hand shook as I opened the computer and began browsing through everything: bank accounts, investment accounts, and the property deed. Each paper I studied felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me that this was about survival, not sabotage. I didn't mean to hurt her. I couldn't get rid of the idea that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it later. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, I felt a crushing weight settle against my chest. I had entirely trusted her for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother and explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. "I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case." She was silent for a minute, likely trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. "Are you okay?" Her voice was filled with anxiety. "Yeah," I lied. "It's just a precaution. Nothing to worry about." She didn't press me, but I could hear the pause in her voice when she responded. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need." I hung up the phone with an odd mix of relief and shame. I despised engaging her in this mess, but knowing she had my back provided some steadiness in an otherwise chaotic environment. By the time Em arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, and even the house, to my mother's name. I kept enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice anything. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I appeared okay, but inside I was a wreck. Part of me felt awful, as if I had betrayed her trust. But another part of me felt relieved, as if I was finally gaining control of a situation that had spiraled out of my control. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want to let her know that anything had changed. She appeared satisfied, even unusually cheery at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it increased my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she did an excellent job of concealing it. What stood out, however, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I questioned her the last time. It was as if the subject had evaporated from her memory. At first, I believed I had overreacted, and she dismissed the subject since it wasn't relevant. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it. Almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I pressed her. I noticed her staring at me a few times, as if she was assessing my mood or contemplating whether to say something. Every time I noticed, she'd quickly return her attention to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was slight, but it was present. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me feel more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered essential, and the way she avoided it suddenly appeared deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she was not going in. If she was waiting for something, I was not about to give her the go-ahead. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made certain that everything was solid. I glanced over the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of my mother's asset transfers. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm that she had all of the necessary papers. 2 weeks had passed, and everything appeared normal, frankly. She was acting more loving, even starting to talk about unrelated topics like jobs or what we should eat for the evening. It threw me off because she'd been aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. Part of me began to question whether I had been overreacting all along. Maybe the strange conduct was merely stress or something I didn't comprehend. But then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach fell quickly. I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she replied, her voice so calm it seemed prepared. It wasn't furious or emotional, it was simply frigid, as if she had told me we had run out of milk. I stared at her, unsure how to respond as she explained her argument. She mentioned needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage, standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different tone. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out, it was that she framed it as if I owed her something, that everything was my fault, and she was simply claiming what was properly hers. As I sat there, trying to understand what she was saying, a new question arose. Why now? Then she said something that made everything start to make sense. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. "A friend." I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she stated it was not casual. It seemed like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't simply a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more I became skeptical. Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifice? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to offer her the life she desired, and it wasn't just about money. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a lengthier commute for me. When she wanted to attend that pricey yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I backed her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk because I wanted her happy. I believed being a decent husband meant putting her first whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was an unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she had mentioned loving. When she mentioned feeling caught in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She was not upset due to anything I did or did not do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was the acquaintance she kept bringing up, or something else. But the lady sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I was not going to let her rewrite our marriage tale to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her at the moment. Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, such as, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay, but I didn't mind. My attention had already changed. I needed to know who or what was causing her sudden, planned shift in conduct. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something greater, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it had already. After that chat, she went into her own apartment, and I received the divorce papers on Monday. Let me tell you, they didn't only want to stop the relationship. They were planning to take everything, half the house, my savings, my assets, and the car. She wanted it all. Plus, some ambiguous spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It seemed as if she was expecting me to give her all I had worked for. At first, I assumed she was just being vengeful, but the way she articulated her demands, so specific and aggressive, reassured me that she had someone guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. I began with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I searched through her tagged photographs and comments looking for someone new. That's when I discovered the pattern. Jake repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't appear to be much more than a 30-year-old marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before, on the same day I overheard her discussing starting afresh. My gut churned as I continued scrolling. More subtle signals were a comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this," as well as a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new residence. None of it was substantial evidence, but it was enough to raise my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for solutions to come my way. Her statement of a friend who helped her get through things remained with me, and I wanted to know who it was. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she knew what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd lately spoken with my wife or if anything seemed strange. Lisa reacted swiftly, saying she had no idea about the friend or any suggestions. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The entire situation felt rushed, as if she was trying to avoid becoming engaged. Not willing to give up, I called another buddy, Emily. I followed the same pattern, stating that I was simply trying to make sense of things. She was apprehensive at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said didn't come back to her. I assured it wouldn't, and after a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was evident that this was more than just her need for space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why. I chose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I headed to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They did not hold hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close, leaning in to talk, was plenty. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the spot where they had been. I did not follow them. I did not need to. At that point, it was evident she hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to go with someone else, and now everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me, she was leaving me with nothing, and she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt strained from the time we stepped in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick that it appeared they were bringing a case against a Fortune 500 firm. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable: half the house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some gibberish about spousal support. I remained silent, seeming to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he handed a stack of paperwork across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think it's important for everyone to review these. Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room became utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then she turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to rage. "You planned this?" she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I did not respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, apparently agitated, requested my counsel to elaborate. So he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence necessary to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The signatures were duly notarized, and the confidence was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she said, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to me." I still did not say anything. What was there to say? This was not about me doing anything to her. This was to defend myself because she had made it apparent she was not going quietly. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. When we walked out of the building, she took me aside in the hallway, her expression a mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she added, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated following the mediation session. She went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls, endless calls. At first, she appeared calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that began, "I think we just need to talk," or "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I did not answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had created together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade accusing me of being stingy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and I honestly did not want to. I was finished playing her games, but she was not. When the calls and texts did not work, she began telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax, and that it was all part of a larger farce. A prank? I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends began to ask questions like, if it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork? Or, why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious? When others didn't instantly accept the hoax justification, she doubled down. She said it was not a joke, but rather a test of our relationship's strength. She began casting herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some individuals seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was annoying, but I knew the truth would eventually come out. And it did, due to a common buddy. Let us call him Matt. Matt and I were not particularly close, but we had always been nice. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, stating he had something I needed to see. When we met, he brought out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. "How did you even get these?" I inquired, scanning through the messages. Matt revealed that he and Jake shared a mutual buddy, who had heard their talks. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. It didn't take long for that common buddy to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling awful about remaining silent, the buddy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Matt gave me the texts and said, "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just ranting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone and trying to understand what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding or an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was a cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now: her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our finances, and her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The text soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few friends, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was nearly immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly recognized her for who she truly was. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal things. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust I had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning, but the moment it became evident she wasn't going away with anything, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She was not accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this." One voicemail stated. A different opinion. "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I did not respond. I could not. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one time, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. "I didn't know what she was doing to you," he said. "I'm sorry I ever took her word for it. As for me, I received the house, my savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time: peace of mind. My mother, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the area as mine. Now, life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read. And the remainder of the story is entirely up to me to write." Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.